Chapter 693. The shocking news made Akihiro fall into a state of shock for a long time. When he was young, he was captured by the hunters and sold to CGS as a commodity. Akihiro wanted to fulfill the promise he made to his brother when he was separated. However, under the merciless reality and the shackles of being a sellout, he gradually extinguished these thoughts. In the end, under the merciless suppression of reality and the sellout, Akihiro subconsciously lied to himself. The brother he once swore to save and reunite with might have died long ago. In that merciless and cold universe, in a corner unknown to others, there was a quietly died. Akihiro, who constantly lied to himself, gradually sank into this new big family after the establishment of the Iron Flower Regiment. All of this, was shattered by Rei Minkai's words. Your Excellency. Akihiro stuttered a few words and then subconsciously swallowed his saliva. For a long time, he was unable to express the shock and doubt in his heart. Changhong Artland. That's your brother's name, right? Rei Minkai's soft voice was the last straw that completely crushed Akihiro. That's right. That was the name of Akihiro's long-lost brother. Even when Akihiro bought CGS from the hunters, Maruba did not know of this name. No matter what the reason was, in the entire CGS era, or the current Iron Flower Regiment era, no one should know of Akihiro's brother's name. Therefore, when Rei Minkai said this name, a glimmer of hope appeared in Akihiro's heart. Your Excellency. That's right. My brother is Changhong Artland. Accepting reality was not difficult for Akihiro. During his time as a sellout, Akihiro had experienced countless similar scenes. However, he was afraid that after learning of Changhong Artland's existence, he would suddenly be told bad news. Rei Minkai nodded. From the information left behind by the fat pig, the young man named Changhong Artland did appear in his merchandise. Although there are no pictures, fortunately, the name Changhong Artland was marked as the buyer's whereabouts. What? Akihiro's entire body tensed up. His wooden expression was mixed with anticipation, surprise, and even fear. Yes. In fact, the whereabouts of the absolute seller was not complicated. Individuals, organizations, and even forces that can buy absolute sales are almost all of the same nature. Hearing Rei Minkai's simple analysis, Zhao Hong gradually calmed down. As a divestment agent, he knew very well that divestment agents were in a precarious situation and could be annihilated at any time. To be able to be purchased by private security companies like CGS was, to an extreme extent, relatively lucky. But if it was bought by some group or organization in the universe, in the end, even the corpse would not be recovered. In other words, right now, Changhong, according to the information, although the buyer who bought your brother used an alias, judging from his action records, it is likely that he is a pirate entrenched in the Earth Fire Channel, a space pirate. Rei Minkai changed the name of the information he knew, and after some slight processing, he said it out loud. Pirate? Space pirates? But I heard that Lars Horn has already. That is only limited to the universe route formed by Alidnia under the management of Lars Horn. Akihiro. In this world, not all businessmen will obediently follow this route under the management of Lars Horn and may be checked by Lars Horn's patrol fleet at any time. When he heard this knowledge for the first time, Zhao Hong's expression was dumbfounded, but he did not interrupt Rei Minkai. Instead, he quietly listened to Rei Minkai's explanation. So, under the long-term operation and exploration of some people, a dark route that is different from Alidnia's welding line was born. This is a route that is not controlled by Lars Horn, but can lead to Earth. Through this route, some people, some organizations can send some materials and equipment that are not visible to the public to the hands of customers. So, the space pirates were born as well? Relying on this dark route that won't be attacked by Lars Horn's fleet. Zhao Hong's brain was unexpectedly bright. Rei Minkai just mentioned the premise a little, and Zhao Hong immediately thought of the origin of space pirates. Yes. In fact, Akihiro, it is very likely that you were sold to Mars through this dark route. At this moment, Zhao Hong finally learned about the whereabouts of his brother Chang Hong. If Zhao Hong and the others who were bought by the former CGS came to Mars through the dark route, then his brother is likely to exist near the dark route, or even in it. Your Excellency. The route we are going to take next. Yes. Next, the route used by the Taihua Regiment and Tabins to Earth is this dark route. Ray Minkai paused and then said, Zhao Hong. The reason why I told you this news. Just to give you a heads up. In the universe, any hesitation will bury a person, and even implicate everyone on the ship. Zhao Hong's brows were tightly locked, and he didn't know how to express his thoughts for a while. Seeing this, Ray Minkai didn't force him. Today, before sailing to Earth, he told Zhao Hong the news of Chang Hong, not to let Zhao Hong's mood become chaotic because of Chang Hong's existence, but to give Zhao Hong a heads up. Because Ray Minkai didn't want to see brothers fighting again, and then fall into the tragic end of being separated by heaven. Okay, Zhao Hong. Let's call it a day. As long as Chang Hong really exists on that route, then you will meet again, and even reunite one day. Believe me, and also believe in everyone in the Taihua Regiment. Zhao Hong opened his mouth, but couldn't say anything, and could only silently nod. The tense but orderly preparation for sailing was finally completed. However, the three Sun-Moon who had regained their mobility were kept on Jupiter by the doctors with the excuse that they needed to undergo further examination. They also needed to carry out the next step of modification on Barbados. They were left behind. Looking at the gradually shrinking Jupiter, Olga couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Before they set sail, Olga did follow Lei Minkai's suggestion and talked to the three suns and moons. The result was predictable. No matter how Olga tried to persuade Miyuki not to push him too much, Miyuki always used the same expression and tone to ask the question that defeated Olga. It seems that the conversation between you two didn't go well. Ray Minkai's voice sounded, and also brought Olga's thoughts back to reality. Your Excellency, if you encountered such a situation, what would you do? After receiving information about the Alea system from Ray Minkai, Olga also went to Tabins, and even Divez's intelligence network to search for relevant information. Although he couldn't find much in the sporadic records about the long-lived users of the Alea system, Olga could see some records that had symptoms similar to Ray Minkai's description. Even if these long-lived users of the Alea system were piloting mobile engineers, Olga couldn't ignore these sporadic records. Because, if those mobile engineers were replaced by the more complex and powerful MS, these long-lived users of the Alea system would probably have disappeared from the world long ago. I'm stumped by this question, Olga. Ray Minkai bitterly smiled, and couldn't give an answer. Even though Lei Minkai already knew the fate of the three suns and moons, when Olga asked him how he could stop them, he felt a little awkward. Like Olga, he understood Miyuki's personality. The current Iron Flower Regiment could be said to be formed under Olga's leadership with Miyuki's powerful force as the core. If Miyuki had to give up on using the Alea system and piloting Barbados to protect the Iron Flower Regiment, then the Iron Flower Regiment would lose a major pillar. But, Olga, the Iron Flower Regiment doesn't only have Miyuki. If you are strong enough, then the chances of Miyuki piloting Barbados to attack will decrease. This also means that Miyuki's chances of being swallowed by the Alea system will decrease. Is that so? Then I understand. Olga nodded, turned around, and silently looked at the disappearing Jupiter in the distance. All of this could only wait for Olga to make a choice. On the other side, Lux, who had a special mission, pulled Gudelia and gathered the children led by Ride. Lux, why did you call us here? Although he was able to stay with Lux, who was extremely popular among the Iron Flower Regiment, Ride had a bad feeling when he saw the iron coffin placed in the corner of the room and the books beside it. This iron coffin wasn't a literal thing, but the best medical machine that Ray Minkai could find through Market's connections before they departed. Ray Minkai remembered clearly. In the final plot, that damned butterfly girl bounced back and forth on the edge of life and death again and again. Although a certain mother's great power played a role in this, it was undeniable that this world's medical machine might have unexpected miraculous effects. Learn. Lux's words were concise and clear. Gudelia, who stood beside Lux, revealed a faint smile. Ride and everyone. From today onwards, you have to learn the knowledge in the books and use the medical machine behind us to treat our comrades who might be injured on the battlefield in the future. What? Treat? Us? Learn the knowledge in those books. Ride's companions began to discuss with each other. If it was a battle, Ride and his companions were naturally mentally prepared. However, if it was learning the knowledge and using the medical machine, it would be harder than ascending to the heavens for Ride and his companions. Clap. Lux clapped her hands lightly and pulled Ride's attention back. All right. Don't doubt your own ability. You're still in the golden age of learning, and you're all carefully selected candidates from the Ironflower Regiment. As long as you're willing to work hard, it won't be difficult to learn how to operate this medical machine. Am I right? Lux's method of dealing with children was extremely skillful. In just a few words, Ryder's little friends were settled and even ignited the enthusiasm of these little friends to learn. But looking at his companions who even held the books upside down, Ride was still a little confused. Why do you want us to use this medical machine? Lux, you should know how to use it too, right? We should have more important things to do. Hearing Ride's question, Lux and Gudelia looked at each other and smiled. Gudelia, can you teach them? Gudelia gladly agreed. After a glance at Gudelia, who had adjusted the books in her companion's hands and started teaching, Lux turned to Ride again. Ride, are you a little disappointed that you were transferred from your previous position? You feel that you can't fight with your companions anymore, right? Ride bit his lips and nodded. In Ride's naive outlook on life, everyone in the Ironflower Regiment lived for the sake of fighting. Other than fighting, there was nothing else that could give the Ironflower Regiment the meaning of survival. No, Ride. You misunderstood. Lux looked at Ride's expression and already knew what he was thinking. It's because everyone in the Ironflower Regiment is fighting hard that they need a safe haven to rest and heal their injuries. And here is a safe haven for our companions who have returned from the battlefield to rest and heal their injuries. Ride slowly moved his gaze and looked at his companions who were listening attentively to Gudelia's explanation. He seemed to have realized something. After we learn how to operate the medical machine, can we really heal everyone in the Ironflower Regiment? Ride inadvertently thought of his companions who were unable to participate in this trip to Earth due to their poor medical treatment when Lars Horn attacked. They could only stay on Mars. If that medical machine could really heal everyone's injuries as Lux had said, then the regrets from back then would probably not happen again. Yes, Ride. The key to being able to skillfully use the medical machine and heal everyone's injuries is you and them. Although Lux's voice was soft, it gave Ride a strong sense of confidence. Is that so? Then I'll learn. Lux, no, Teacher Lux. Chapter 694. In a universe near an Ariadne signal tower that was 3 Ariadne channels away from entering Earth's orbit, a Bisco-class cruiser belonging to the Lars Horn space fleet that had just returned from a Mars cruise finally reached the end of the trip. There are still 3 Ariadne channels? It seems that we spent a lot of time on this trip. It's all thanks to that Minister Connor. Galileo looked at the darkness in the distance, as if he could already see the blue planet that gave birth to human civilization. Although it was a bit tricky, it was solved in the end. The blond man sitting in the command seat, McGillis, said slowly. Although several months had passed, the battle that took place in the low orbit of Mars was still vivid in his mind. The new group formed from the bodies of the old masters with the orphans and the Terminator as the main body, as well as the mysterious body that made the final decision in that battle. All of this made the boring patrolling job very different. Thinking of this, McGillis' eyes became abnormally deep. As if he was thinking about something, it was hard to guess what he was thinking. Major McGillis, do you feel that this trip is a bit tiring? In the end, apart from that damned Connor, no, I should say that he has already paid with his life for his arrogance. That group of space rats is also the reason why this journey has become so troublesome and tiring. Galileo stepped forward and walked to the center of the bridge. He put his hands on his waist and looked a little angry. His friend's behavior was not beyond McGillis' expectations. After all, whether it was on the journey to Mars or on the way back to Earth, Galileo Badwin, his friend, never hid his thoughts. In this incident, the destination of the Iron Flower Regiment, which is important, can be imagined. With Godelia Lana Bernstein, no matter how they escape from Lars Horn's sight, their destination is still Earth. When McGillis was cleaning up the mess of Lars Horn's Mars branch, he had already learned a lot of information from Connor's activities over the years and the man who seemed to have little to do with it, but because of his identity, he was deeply involved in this incident. No wonder they are inferior creatures. The more you chase after them, the faster they run. No, we won't let them escape. Galileo. McGillis raised his gaze slightly and looked at his friend. Their destination won't change. Therefore, under this premise, I will look for the man who knows the information behind this. Information? At that moment, a familiar, dull voice interrupted McGillis and Garrio's conversation. I was wondering who it was. I didn't expect that the man who has been locked in his room since returning from Mars is finally willing to come out for some fresh air. Although not long ago, this man who had been silent in the room for a long time had left the deepest impression in Galileo's life. As time passed, Galileo eventually returned to his previous tit-for-tat attitude. Long time no see. Mr. K. How is your sister doing? Although I had thought of visiting you before, I was afraid that I would disturb you. I'm very sorry. When McGillis saw the masked man walk out of the hatch, he stood up and nodded at him in a friendly manner. Long time no see. Mr. McGillis, Mr. Galileo. It's been a long journey. The masked man nodded, completely ignoring Galileo's tit-for-tat actions. He paused for a moment before continuing. He continued, Sorry for troubling you. My sister's condition is not good, nor is it bad. It's just an old illness that has accumulated over the years. After returning to Earth, the next step of the examination can be carried out. Really? That's tough. Judging from your previous performance, it seems that you have been searching for a long time? Galileo tried to test Mr. K. Yeah. A long time. It was because of my carelessness that my unfortunate sister was separated from my side. The masked man, Mr. K., or rather, Lou Lucio. Under the protection of that pitch-black mask, Lou Lucio's expression wasn't visible to others. They could only understand Lou Lucio's current mood through his voice. But even so, McGillis and Galileo clearly understood the misfortune of being separated from their loved ones. At that time, I didn't have enough power. I could only watch as my sister was taken away from me. Although not long after, with the help of my friends, I successfully took revenge on the enemy who took away my sister. But in the end, I was still separated from my sister, Lilina. That's a really unfortunate experience. McGillis sighed out loud. But it's all in the past. No matter what price you paid in order to find your sister, you can rejoice now that you have reunited with the sister you treasured. This is already a blessing worth rejoicing over. Thank you for your kind words, Mr. McGillis. McGillis is right. How about this? After returning to Earth, if you need anything, you can come to the Bardavin family to find me. I'm sure my sister, Amelia Bardavin, will be happy to meet new friends. Thank you very much for your kind intentions. Allowing me to board this cruiser is already the greatest help you can give me, Your Excellencies. Therefore, in order to repay your kindness, I happen to have a way to solve the problem that you too have been troubled by. While the two sides were exchanging pleasantries, Lucio suddenly said something that hit the hearts of the two. Behind the dark mask, Lucio saw Galio's surprise and McGillis' doubts. As the trace of a confident smile quietly surfaced, Lucio spoke slowly. Iron Flower Regiment. This third-rate character who caused Lars Horn to lose face will go to Earth through Divac's secret operation through a dark channel that is not controlled by Lars Horn. In the Dark Universe, the Iron Flower Regiments Fishfire and Tabin's Warhammer sailed one after another. It had been a few months since they separated from Divac's large planetary cruiser, and the journey was peaceful. Not to mention the possible appearance of Lars Horn's cruising fleet, even the trading spacecraft that they would occasionally encounter did not appear. It seemed that after leaving Jupiter, Fishfire and Warhammer entered a quiet channel where only these two spacecraft existed. However, this was just a facade. In Warhammer's reception room, everyone was silently looking at the men sitting on the sofa on both sides of the table across the table. Sitting on the left was a man in a white suit with long black hair, looking elegant. Sitting across from him was a young man who could not be ignored even though he was dressed in casual clothes. After a long silence, the man in the white suit slowly spoke. "How confident are you, sir? I don't believe that there will be a blind guy on this channel who dares to challenge Tabins, who is known for his strength. What's more, the Chamber of Commerce, mercenaries, and even those disgusting space pirates who are involved in this route know very well what kind of terrible situation they will face after provoking our Tubbins, no Daiwas. Tabin's strength is obvious to all. Not to mention Divac, who is standing behind Tabins and is now also standing behind Iron Flower Regiment. However, there is a saying in my hometown, there is always a higher mountain. Even though Divac's name is resounding in the outer circle, there is another tiger in the galaxy where humans live." Estimating the time and progress of the journey, Ray Minkai decided to first mention the enemy that the Iron Flower Regiment and Tabins were about to encounter. Obviously, Minace did not believe Ray Minkai's warning for the first time. "Tiger?" Minace frowned slightly, then looked away and looked behind Ray Minkai at the young man who had just become her sworn brother, the current head of the Iron Flower Regiment, Olga. After the battle on Mars, Lars Horn did not continue to pursue the Iron Flower Regiment. "I'm afraid that he will make a fuss about this dark channel. Your Excellency Lay Minkai, your speculation is indeed very likely to come true." Minace, who tried to connect all the key factors together, gradually came to a conclusion similar to Ray Minkai's warning. Indeed, no matter how famous Divac is in the outer circle, he will be overshadowed by Lars Horn, who has ruled humanity for hundreds of years. In that case, who is the one who has their eyes on us? Is it the same Chamber of Commerce that betrayed the Iron Flower Regiment, or pirates? Ray Minkai said a name that made Minace frown. As a veteran who has been running back and forth on this dark channel for Divac for many years, Minace was very clear about how difficult it would be to encounter pirates here. Pirates? Although it's a bit unexpected, it's also reasonable. As the Overlord who has ruled humanity for hundreds of years, as long as he extends a dry olive branch, these dregs who only know how to rob other people's property in the past will flock to us. Minace, who made such a sigh, obviously accepted Ray Minkai's warning. "In that case, I believe that Your Excellency has already made arrangements?" "Well, just now I have already asked Akihiro to attack. In addition, I will also attack later." What Minace didn't expect was that Ray Minkai's warning didn't stop at words, but to the point of action. In fact, he even planned to be a part of the attack. Looking at Ray Minkai's serious eyes, Minace couldn't help but laugh. Haha. It seems that I was negligent. Okay. Now, 100 miles away from the routine alert, Tabins will also send out a Balian to participate in the mission of alerting the surrounding universe. I don't know if this can make up for my negligence? This is enough. Minace. Tabin's actions were all within Rei Minkai's expectations. To be honest, when Rei Minkai decided to be a part of the attack, the so-called attack was probably no longer a problem. Well, thank you very much for your understanding. It's just that Your Excellency is too. Seeing that Rei Minkai didn't pursue Tabin's negligence, Minace was relieved, and also noticed Rei Minkai's movements. Is it too much of a fuss? Rei Minkai smiled slightly, then turned his head and glanced at Olga and the others. Minace, I believe you also know that Olga and the others are orphans, and they were even sold out. And in this dark channel, there may be relatives of Akihiro, who are also the only relatives of those who have been sold out. What? A cry of surprise suddenly came from behind. Minace looked up and saw Olga's dumbfounded expression, and couldn't help but smile. This is really embarrassing. Olga, you are the captain. Did you forget what you said to me personally? You don't even know the situation of your family, and in the end, you still need the shareholders to arrange things. No matter if it's the captain or the parents, you are disqualified. Big brother. Fortunately, Olga's embarrassment was interrupted by the rapid ringing of the bell. It was a warning. It was the warning of an enemy attack. Minace. 1,600 miles ahead, an unknown airship is attacking. It has already engaged in a battle with the Grey's airship piloted by Akihiro. Bailey has already turned around to provide support. Listening to the communication from the bridge, Rei Minkai stood up. Then, it's time for me to attack. Olga, Minace, I'll leave the rest of the plan to you. I believe that you aren't the kind of idiots who will only take a beating and not retaliate, right? Minace casually picked up the hat beside her, and while putting it on, she looked at Olga. Sorry. My temper sometimes isn't too good. What about you? Olga. Same. Big brother. The warning sound that resounded through the interior of the Warhammer had just stopped, and a pair of gorgeous light wings quietly bloomed from the takeoff runway of the Fisherman's Fire. Free Gouda had attacked. Seeing Free Gouda flying on the battlefield once again, the Iron Flower Regiment members didn't panic because of the sudden attack, they only had a sense of order. On the other hand, Akihiro, who was already fighting with the enemy, was somewhat anxious. Because behind the Grey's airship was Takaki, who was participating in this reconnaissance operation and was piloting the mobile engineer airship. Takaki, retract the suspension rope and fix it behind the airship. I'm going to accelerate. Because of the mobile engineer airship, Akihiro's movements became somewhat hesitant. This also gave the enemy a chance, and like a pack of wolves that smelled blood, they launched a storm of attacks towards the Grey's airship. In an instant, Akihiro actually found any way to get rid of the enemy and brought Takaki back to the Fisherman's Fire. The enemy's attacks seemed to be launched from all directions, drowning Greys in a storm of attacks. Clearly there are only 3 airships. Akihiro clenched his teeth and tried his best to avoid the enemy's attacks while taking into account the mobile engineer airship behind him. This was also due to the fact that Akihiro had followed Rei Minkai's request in the past, and with the help of his companions, he continuously carried out the training that was extremely inconceivable in the eyes of ordinary people. Akihiro, who gradually took control of the rhythm, not only allowed Greys to frequently avoid the enemy's attacks, but he also found an opportunity to launch a counterattack amidst the enemy's storm-like attacks. It was also because of this that Takaki was able to begin to adapt to this sudden battle. No, I can't be afraid. I want my sister to go to school, so I absolutely can't die here. The constant vibrations caused by the attacks made Takaki's stomach churn, but this also made him clench his teeth, muster up his courage, and look up at the shaking screen. Akihiro, steady. I want to use the missile on the mobile engineer airship to fight for a chance. What? Akihiro was stunned for a moment, then reacted. Good. Takaki, you have to be careful. However, Takaki's determination did not usher in the moment that changed reality. When the enemy saw that Greys could actually hold on for so long, they changed their attack formation on the spot and launched a more violent and tit-for-tat attack. Mobile Engineer Airship. The mobile engineer airship that was fixed on Grey's back with a steel cable was noticed by the enemy from the beginning. In the situation where the attack was not successful for a long time, the mobile engineer airship piloted by Takaki became the enemy's target. Takaki, be careful! While dealing with the two enemy airships that were constantly exchanging attack positions, the third enemy airship actually accelerated and rushed out from a direction that Akihiro did not notice. It waved its machete and slashed at Grey's head. This attack, not to mention Grey's, even the mobile engineer airship that was fixed on Grey's back would not be able to escape. At this moment, looking at the gleaming blade, Akihiro and Takaki were stunned. At this moment, in the dark void, a fleeting streamer swept through the void and shattered the cold light that stopped Akihiro and Takaki's consciousness. Boom! Akihiro and Takaki vaguely seemed to hear the sound of wind and thunder. When they reacted, the MS that raised its machete and wanted to send Akihiro and Takaki to hell was torn apart. And after the broken wreckage of the enemy airship, there was a bright streamer that drew a bright trajectory in the dark void. In the blink of an eye, two light spots silently bloomed in front of Akihiro and Takaki. Akihiro, Takaki, what are you waiting for? Start retrieving the enemy airship. Oh right. Although the signal here has been blocked by me, be careful of the enemy's pilot's extreme behavior. In this silent scene, Rei Minkai's voice sounded. Ah, understood. The enemy airship that gave him a headache just now was actually taken care of by the Free Gouda, who suddenly appeared in the blink of an eye. With such an astonishing gap between them, Akihiro once again realized just how weak he really was. Chapter 695. Light footsteps came from the tunnel. Gudelia, who had changed into casual clothes and tied her blonde hair into a high ponytail like Lux, arrived at the noisy Neku. Not long ago, Gudelia, who was teaching Ryder and the others how to use medical machines, heard the news from the bridge. It seemed that Akihiro, who had attacked previously, had captured the enemy's mech and brought it back. Now, other than the necessary guards, most people seemed to have gathered in Neku. Gudelia was still hesitating whether to go to Neku to see what was going on. However, after Lux sent a message, Gudelia changed her mind. Because the enemy's mech pilot that Akihiro brought back seemed to be a Terminator 2. Only Gudelia, who had close contact with the Terminator members led by Akihiro from the Iron Flower Regiment, could not help but be interested in the Terminator members outside of the Iron Flower Regiment. What kind of people were they? Were they like Akihiro, who was cold on the outside but warm on the inside? Or were they like the other Terminator members who saw Akihiro as their leader? With these doubts, Gudelia came to Neku. Gudelia, don't make a sound. Just as Gudelia walked into Neku, she saw Lux's hand gesture to her to be quiet. Seeing this, Gudelia could not help but lighten her footsteps and came to Lux's side. Together, they looked at the wreckage surrounded by the crowd. Although there were many people around the wreckage, from the appearance of the wreckage, it should be the MS's torso. Therefore, other than the onlookers, there were also people in charge of removing the cockpit door at the torso. Gudelia moved her gaze and looked at the other side of the crowd. In the corner on the other side of Neku, there were two thin young men in black and gray clothes that looked like prison clothes lying there motionlessly. That's the enemy's mech pilot that Kai and Akihiro captured during this attack. Lux, who had arrived first, witnessed the entire process of the two young men being rescued from the broken MS's torso by the Iron Flower Regiment. Although the Freedom Gouda piloted by Rei Minkai was powerful enough to cut the three enemy mechs into pieces in the blink of an eye, Rei Minkai was still able to do so. However, this time, Rei Minkai had a sense of propriety. In order to protect these people who were on the opposite side, and also like Akihiro, Lei-Minkai's action was to make the enemy lose their ability to attack, and even their ability to move. Be careful! Be careful! While Gudelia was sizing up the two youths, Takaki, who was commanding the crane, confirmed that the hooks were in place and started to open up the broken cockpit. As the hooks gradually tightened, a crack, and the cockpit finally opened Gaian's. And Lux to Lux's twos, guessed Gaian and Lux and its Lux AK. Acto Lux to catch. State 0. A black figure rushed out from the crowd and pulled Gaian down in a flash. Another white figure rushed in front of the black figure. Bang! A gunshot rang out above the Neku, and a bullet hit the floor not far from Gudelia's left, creating sparks. The light that blossomed in that instant shocked and terrified Gudelia. Gudelia, be careful! Lux pulled Gudelia to her side and asked with concern. Are you okay? No. I'm fine. What happened? Gudelia was stunned for a moment and asked subconsciously. Probably, something happened that made them very unwilling. Lux's gaze became deep, but she couldn't bear to see it. Gudelia didn't understand, but when she followed Lux's gaze, Gudelia saw Lei-Minkai and the pure white lion standing on the left and right of the cockpit. It wasn't hard to see that when the gunshot tore through the air above the Neku, Lei-Minkai's face showed a trace of anger. The pure white lion named State 0 scratched its sharp claws on the broken armor from time to time, causing sparks to fly. The cockpit's door is already open. I'll give you 10 seconds. If you don't come out, don't blame me for being impolite. Lei-Minkai's gaze was extremely cold. Even if the cockpit only opened a crack, it was enough to make the person hiding in the cockpit feel a trace of chilling fear. In the crack of light, the youth who was holding the pistol tightly gritted his teeth and slowly raised the pistol, attempting to repeat the previous attack. Roar! However, the moment the youth raised the gun, an angry roar swept over like a storm, surging into the gap and into the youth's ears, shaking the youth's hearing for a long time. No. I can't die. In the deafening roar, the youth struggled, trying to use the last bit of strength in his body to fire the gun. However, a gust of wind rolled up and actually flipped over the youth's cockpit door on the spot. The youth, who was instantly pulled out from the darkness, was dazzled by the bright light. Roar! There was another roar. Amidst the white lights, a black shadow pressed down like Mount Tai. In an instant, the thin and weak young man was firmly pressed into the cockpit, unable to move at all. No. His survival instinct erupted at this moment. However, the black shadow that pressed the youth into the cockpit was extremely huge and heavy. Not only was the youth unable to break free from the terrifying force, it even gave the youth the illusion that his 4 limbs were being pressed down and his body was already broken. Kacha! Suddenly, the familiar sound of a bullet being retracted rang out. Kacha! There was another sound. This time, it was the sound of the magazine being retracted. Ding! Ding! A bullet fell on the cold armor, and the crisp sound pulled the youth's consciousness back to reality from the white light. Are you awake? The black shadow in front of him gradually became clear. At this moment, the youth finally saw the true face of the black shadow. It's the lion. The terrible beast that the youth can't accurately name. And the voice that took the youth's only weapon, came from the side. I didn't know that pirates would equip people with such weapons. Isn't it obvious that they want to sell people and run away? Lei-Minkai looked condescendingly at the young man who had just woken up. He casually threw aside the pistol in his hand that he had disassembled and said with a smile that was not a smile. The youth moved his eyes and glanced at the pistol that had become parts. Then he closed his eyes and no longer paid attention to the things around him. Even if the culprit who was pressing him in the cockpit was a ferocious lion. Roar! The youth's attitude seemed to make State 0 a little unhappy. Originally, State 0 wanted to see the young man's frightened face, but he did not expect the young man to be so fearless and not care about him at all. Tch. After roaring a few times, State Zero, who was asking for a snub, raised his head and glanced at Ray Minkai, then turned around and jumped down from the wreckage, and went back to lie down on the ground. However, even if State Zero took the initiative to leave, the youth still hid in the cockpit and didn't move at all. He looked like a dead person. Are you still pretending to be dead? Ray Minkai looked down at the youth who had closed his eyes and looked like he was waiting for death. Or are you waiting for your owner to come and save you? From the pirates, no, from Brovize, a sellout boy. The moment Ray Minkai mentioned the name Browas, the youth moved. Although it was only a momentary change, it also showed that Ray Minkai had hit the bullseye of the truth. Still don't want to speak? Very good. But your companions are much more obedient. State Zero. Roar. In Ray Minkai's slightly joking words, State Zero's roar sounded again. It was followed by the dull sound of a heavy object hitting the floor, and the panicked screams of the two youths. No! Don't kill me! Save! Save me! The terrified screams of the companions resounded throughout Neku. In the midst of the terrified screams, the roaring beast was approaching the youth step by step. Then there was the sound of flesh being torn apart and the heart-wrenching screams. No. Save. Save, that familiar and terrifying voice. That familiar and terrifying voice. The youth, who was quietly waiting in the cockpit and prepared for death, suddenly jumped up and glared at Ray Minkai, who was standing at the side. Stop! I brought them to attack you! The moment the angry words came out, the youth was stunned on the spot. Because, behind Ray Minkai, the pure white lion was still lying there lazily, as if it had not moved at all. Beside the two captive companions, there were people from the Iron Flower Regiment who were holding pieces of fresh red flesh and tearing them up. Obviously, the sound that the youth heard just now was only faked by the Iron Flower Regiment. You guys, how dare you lie to me? The youth, who realized that he was deceived, clenched his fists in anger, jumped up, and threw a punch at Ray Minkai. However, the angry youth did not know that Ray Minkai had been waiting for this moment for a long time. With a slight sway of his body, Ray Minkai dodged the young man's furious fist. He raised his right hand and pressed down with his left hand. With a twist of his waist, the young man was pulled out of the cockpit on the spot and slammed onto the ice-cold armor. Purring! The dull sound was like the sound of a bell, shaking the youth's consciousness to pieces, almost unable to condense into a whole. So it's quiet now. Zhao Hong, I'll leave the rest to you. This was the last sentence that the youth heard before he fainted. Zhao Hong, what exactly is this? The meeting this time was not concentrated in the meeting room of Warhammer. Instead, it was carried out through video communication. Is it Browas? I didn't expect him to be the one to attack us. After receiving the information from Uhura, Minace pondered for a moment and sighed. In this sea route, in terms of brutality, Browas's Brook Kabayan can be considered one of them. Especially that androgynous monster under his command, Kudar Katter. This awkward guy is extremely extreme in some matters. If he makes a mistake, he will even attack others. That's true. I've also heard that Browas seemed to have a period of time where he frequently replenished his men. I'm afraid it has something to do with this monster. Next to her, Amida also added the information she knew. Is that so? But regardless of whether the other side is brutal or not, or if it's a monster that's neither male nor female, we only have one choice in the face of the outcome. Listening to Minace and Amida's information, Ray Minkai slowly stated the conclusion that he had been planning for a long time. We can only fight back. Only by getting rid of this stumbling block, Browas, can our trip to Earth be completed smoothly. Isn't that right? Minace raised her eyebrows and nodded. That's true. Just standing there and getting beaten up is not the style of our Tubbins. I have to say, Your Excellency's idea is to my liking. It's just that Your Excellency doesn't know how to plan it? Naturally, Minace wouldn't mind fighting with Brovis. Otherwise, Tubbins, who were mainly female members, wouldn't have made a name for themselves with their martial strength. To be honest, I really want to give Tubbins' partners a chance to perform. But this time, I can only pilot the Freedom Gouda to attack. When they heard this, Minace and Amida suddenly looked at each other. They didn't expect that the Freedom Gouda, who had just captured all the enemies in one fell swoop, would attack again, and it was a one-man raid against the enemy that they couldn't find at the moment. After thinking about it, Minace seemed to have caught the key point. Is the reason why Your Excellency is doing this for those few pilots? Well, part of the reason. Akihiro's younger brother, Changhong Artran, is very likely, maybe he's among these pilots. Is that so? The only way to liberate the Terminator is to kill the owner with powerful force under the watchful eyes of the Terminator? Minace murmured her guess. Now that the Terminator were all over the solar system, perhaps this was the only way to liberate the Terminator from the shadow of the owner. Then, Tubbins will clean up this battlefield with Your Excellency. Well, please. In a corner of Naku, 3 teenagers from the pirate group Bruce were imprisoned together. Although they were imprisoned, they were actually tied up and thrown in a position where they could see most of Naku. After that, no one cared about their life or death. Even if the 3 teenagers were secretly trying to break free from the bindings of the rope. Roar. When the roar sounded again, the 3 teenagers stopped trying to break free from the ropes and subconsciously looked at the center of Naku. A mighty and extraordinary steel body. A huge and gorgeous pair of steel wings. The steel giant that was transported to the center of Naku by the mechanical arm attracted the attention of the teenagers as soon as it appeared. That's the body that defeated us in an instant. The sharp-eyed teenager immediately recognized that it was the Freedom Gouda that defeated them in an instant. Yes, that's the body that Your Excellency is piloting, the Freedom Gouda. Now Your Excellency is about to pilot the Freedom Gouda to attack and defeat the culprit that bound you and liberate you. A slightly dull voice with a hint of excitement came from behind the teenagers. The teenagers looked back and saw a burly, square-faced, dull boy standing there, looking at one of them. Long time no see. My younger brother, Changhong Artran. Soon you'll be able to go home. Chapter 696. In the universe filled with countless wreckage left behind from the sacrificial war era, a small fleet composed of 2 assault armored ships and a transport ship was slowly moving along the undulating cracks in the wreckage. The distribution of these cracks was uneven, as if something was tearing the wreckage apart, causing the wreckage that had drifted in this universe for hundreds of years to be unable to escape. However, the people who were in it could always find the reason for such a strange scene in the extremely awkward and abnormal wreckage. A HAP furnace. In the sacrificial war era, this was the power device that allowed humans who suffered from the AI rebellion to obtain the last trace of resistance. Even in that earth-shattering war, the MS body that lost its ability to drive itself was still firmly operating. Just like during the war, it continued to output the power it possessed and continued the terrible war. Brooke Cabayan. From his appearance, he looked exactly like it should be said that he looked very similar to the image of a certain man in Lei Mingkai's childhood memories. At this moment, the man was secretly clenching his fist. What should I do? What should I do? Earlier, a certain man took the initiative to contact the Browas pirates led by Brooke Cabayan in the name of Lars Horn. From the content of the commission, it was no different from their notorious pirate group in the past. Coupled with the addition of Lars Horn's name, Brooke agreed to the commission without hesitation. But in the end, the first-man Rhodey MS team that was sent out was actually all silent in the blink of an eye. Whether it was the correspondent or the safety device that Brooke had already prepared, They were all unable to contact the Man-Roti team that was sent out to wait for an opportunity to snatch the personnel and then coerce the Ironflower Regiment to hand over Goodelia. After many attempts, Brooke had to face the fact that Man-Roti's team had been completely destroyed. How is it possible? Even if it's Tabins, or even Daiwas standing behind him, they can't have the strength to destroy Man-Roti's team in an instant. In any case, that group of scum can't be killed casually. After thinking about it, Brooke raised his gaze and looked at the correspondent. Hey! Contact Kodar. Tell him to come to the bridge. I'm afraid I'll have to be more careful with my next move. Since the other party's strength was beyond his expectations, then Bounce had to take out his capital to continue this mission. As for whether or not he would reject this commission, the moment Brooke thought of this, he decisively threw it to the back of his mind. That was a request from Lars Horn. As long as he completed it beautifully, he would definitely be able to hold onto Lars Horn's thigh. At that time, even if they suffered heavy losses, they would still be able to rely on Lars Horn's support to quickly grow stronger. This deal was worth a gamble. In front of the many wreckage universes that were attracted by the still-operating Ahab furnace, Tabin's Warhammer and Ironflower Regiment's Fishfire were slowly changing directions, flying towards the area marked by Free Gouda, who had set off first, according to the original plan. At the same time, Babados, Mitsuyuki, and Nadi, who stayed on Jupiter to receive further modifications, managed to catch up with the Ironflower Regiment on the eve of the operation. Yo! 3 days and 3 months. You're back just in time. We have an operation on our side. You stay on Babados and wait. Sorry, I didn't let you down to rest. After the long-distance support hangar tank Type 3 carrying Babados entered Naku, Olga immediately sent out a message. Operation? Okay. I'll stay here and wait. 3 days and 3 months were very straightforward and agreed without thinking. As for the content of the operation, 3 days and 3 months didn't ask anything, they just waited for the moment the operation began. As the protagonist of this operation, Free Gouda had been flying for more than 10 minutes in the sea of wreckage left behind by battleships, MS, and even MA. Lei Minkai had to admit that after personally experiencing and witnessing the terrifying traces of the apocalypse sacrificial war left behind by the sea of wreckage, Lei Minkai had a stronger sense of intimacy compared to when he was viewing his previous work. Are these the remnants left behind by the war of sacrifice? Free Gouda didn't activate the Radiant Bearer at this moment. His purpose was to search for and approach the Brua's pirates' fleet while hiding his whereabouts to the greatest extent. After all, the activation of the Radiant Bearer was a bit too eye-catching. Suddenly, a white shadow drifted past Free Gouda and landed on the larger area on the right in front of him, which seemed to be the wreckage of a battleship. This place is really miserable. Just like the Imperial capital's defense war back then, all you can see are broken mecha and wreckage engulfed by flames. The drifting white shadow gradually stabilized, revealing a pure white steel body. Above the shining golden teeth was the face of the long-fanged lion, State Zero. At this moment, State Zero, who quietly followed Free Gouda's attack, finally returned to his original body in this Dead Sea that no one would notice. This is a terrible war where humans used all their strength to take back the world from the AI for the last chance of survival. Naturally, it's somewhat similar to our time. Ray Minkai sighed, but unexpectedly attracted State Zero's sneer. However, the humans of this world survive, and we can only run around in various worlds. The golden claws slowly left scratches on the wreckage of the warship as the long-fanged Lion Zero style fiddled with it. Let's stop lamenting. Those people have found them. It raised its huge head. The golden pupils of the long-fanged lion looked at the depths of the Dead Sea. This was one of the reasons why State Zero quietly followed Free Gouda out. Compared to the radar carried by Free Gouda himself, as a metal life form, the long-fanged lion's sense of smell was more sensitive in this wreckage-filled Dead Sea. In just a few minutes, the long-fanged lion detected the abnormality in the depths of the wreckage. It was very different from the cold and dead wreckage. In other words, there was a high possibility that the Bloa's pirates were located there. The long-fanged lion turned around and looked at Free Gouda. Its long and narrow pupils revealed a glimmer of light. If you can see a tortoise-like body, then it will be your target. A tortoise? State Zero pondered for a moment and suddenly understood Ray Minkai's meaning. Is it? It just so happens that I'm good at peeling off tortoises' shells. The next moment, the pure white long-fanged lion bent its body, and under the push of the thrusters on its back, it quickly leaped into the wreckage sea. At first glance, its speed seemed to be faster than when Ray Minkai was driving it. This guy. Ray Minkai helplessly shook his head and drove Gouda to the other side. Next, it was Free Gouda's turn to attract the enemy's attention. Beep beep beep. Not long after, the Bloa's pirates captured the whereabouts of Free Gouda boss. We discovered an unknown enemy aircraft. It seems to be searching for our whereabouts outside. What? Brooke, who was discussing the next move with Kodar, turned around and glared at the correspondent, then looked at his capable subordinate. There's no other way. Since the enemy has found us, then Kodar, you arrange people to attack. How many more Man Roddy do we have? The loss of Man Roddy's team made Brooke feel extremely pained. There are still 2 to 3 more. But their condition is still not as good as the previous Man Roddy's team. As the commander of Bloaz's MS pilot, Kodar was very clear about the situation of the body. There's no other way. Let's attack. Now is not the time to care about those things. Brooke clenched his teeth and made a decision on the spot. He understood that if he still hesitated because of the poor condition of the body, the Iron Flower Regiment that was wandering outside would very likely attack. Even though Brooke had great confidence in the deathly silent ocean, he was still confident in it. As long as Bloaz firmly grasped the throat of the waterway in the Dead Sea, the Iron Flower Regiment would inevitably find it difficult to break through the defense of Man Roddy's team and directly attack their warship. Beep beep beep. As a few light spots flew out from the warship belonging to the Bloaz pirates, the Free Gouda that was wandering outside also received the warning from the Tusk Lion Zero. Sure enough, they're moving. Then, let's begin. With a flap of its steel wings, the Free Gouda somersaulted and disappeared behind the wreckage that was about 100 meters wide. When it reappeared, it had already greatly shortened the distance between it and the Bloaz pirate. Kodar, that enemy aircraft is heading towards you. Brooke, who noticed the movement of the Free Gouda, immediately warned Kodar, who was leading Man Roddy's team, to attack. What? First it was surprise, then it was excitement. The expression on Kodar's extremely non-mainstream face was extremely distorted. He did not expect that a single aircraft would dare to attack them. It was the first time Kodar saw such an arrogant enemy. Hey, you guys, keep up. As long as you can complete Lars Horn's request, then these few Man Roddies will be yours. In order to complete Lars Horn's request, Brooke also put in a lot of effort. Of course. As for whether or not he would honor it, that would be a matter of time. For now, this set of incentives was indeed somewhat useful. Under this incentive, the absolute seller pilots who replaced Chong Hong and the others to attack did indeed raise their spirits, and neatly followed behind the Gouda Gusion that Kodar was piloting. This scene, however, was seen by the white figure hidden behind the wreckage. A tortoise-like aircraft? Looks like it's the one at the front. State Zero stared at the Gouda Gusion for a while, and after confirming that it was indeed the aircraft that Ray Minkai mentioned, he immediately took action. In the wreckage, a wisp of flame flashed. Although it happened in the blink of an eye, it was discovered by a Man Roddy that was positioned at the back. That, Sir Kodar, there seems to be something strange over there. Gingerly, the peerless robot master sent out a message. What? Don't be mistaken. Your Man Roddy's electronic eyes have some small problems. If it wasn't for that, you wouldn't have the chance to sit here. After Kodar scolded, he still took a look at the area that seemed to have something strange, and based on the idea that there was nothing wrong with being careful. In the end, he did not find anything. Keep your spirits up. Kodar frowned and scolded. Suddenly, a white figure rushed out from behind the wreckage in front of the team, and violently knocked Gauda Gusayan out of the team. Boom! In an instant, Kodar lost control of the situation, and only his body that was struggling to hold on under the violent impact, and his consciousness that was like a small boat struggling to hold on in the middle of a raging wave. Sir Kodar! The three-man Roddy mechs behind Gauda and Gusayan reacted quickly. The moment they saw the white figure knocking Gauda Gusayan away, they raised their assault rifles in an attempt to protect Gauda Gusayan. Buzz! It was another instantaneous change. A sword light blossomed from the void and interrupted the attack of Man Roddy, who was the first to react. In the blink of an eye, Man Roddy saw his right hand, which was still holding the submachine gun, being chopped off. Boom! An explosion suddenly occurred. Man Roddy, whose right hand had been cut off, could not see anything. Tut 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 tut. However, Man Roddy still had 2 matches left. They would not stop attacking just because of the unfortunate Man Roddy. The brief moment of astonishment only allowed the 2 Man Roddy pilots to change their target from the white blur to the unfamiliar body with its steel wings. Wings? What's that? Sword? Do you want to fight us in close combat? Steel wings. The cold gleam of the blade caused Man Roddy's pilots to be shocked, but it also caused them to attack the Freedom Gundam even more crazily. Tut 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 tut. As a person who was sold out, they were also pilots who were temporarily pulled over to make up the numbers. They knew that they had no right to hesitate. Once they hesitated, it would mean that the moment of their death had arrived. Don't you know fear? The attack from Man Roddy naturally could not threaten Freedom Gauda. Then, I'll let you lie down obediently in the cockpit and sleep. Buzz. Freedom Gauda suddenly accelerated. After a few consecutive barrel rolls to avoid Man Roddy's attacks, he had already rushed to the front of one of Man Roddy's. In the blink of an eye, 2 sword lights broke through the air and circled around Man Roddy once before quietly disappearing. Only the pilot was left, looking at the screen that had already faded with a dumbfounded expression, as well as facing the Man Roddy that he was piloting. Chapter 697. Wherever the sword blade passed, there was no one who could withstand it. If one had seen the dazzling performance of Free Gauda in Seed, one would understand the meaning of the above sentence. Other than facing the main enemy, no other soldiers could stand still under the light beam sword of Free Gauda, not even for a second. In the blink of an eye, the light beam sword had yet to disappear, but the enemy mechs that were blocking the advance of Free Gauda were scattered. Even though the weapon in Free Gauda's hand had been changed to the high-frequency vibration sword created by the Dawn Society, the result was still the same. Tut 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 tut. The moment the first Man Roddy was turned into a human stick by Free Gauda, the remaining 2 Man Roddys were even more frenzied as they fired their submachine gun bullets at Free Gauda amidst the flames of different lengths. The 2 Man Roddy that were forced to do something beyond their ability looked at the Man Roddy that their companion was piloting in horror as they called out the name of the person who led them in the attack. Sir Kodar! Sir Kodar! Quick, quick, come and save us! Amidst the sparks from the muzzle, the ghostly Freedom Gundam appeared in front of the second Man Roddy at some point in time. The moment the pair of electronic pupils that flashed with golden light was captured by Man Roddy's electronic eyes, the sword in Free Gauda's hand bloomed again. Buzz! In an instant, Man Roddy's armor that could withstand most of the firearms used by the MS was cut open like a fragile piece of paper by the high-frequency vibration sword. Bang! The Man Roddy heard a terrifying sound from the cockpit when the mech was destroyed. In front of him was the screen that fell into a dead silence after the power source was cut off due to the imbalance of the power furnace. Other than that, the man Roddy felt as if he had fallen into the dead silence of the underworld, waiting for that moment to come. State 0. I've settled it here. This time, Man Roddy's performance could not be compared to the previous batch. Was it because the standard was lower? Or was it because he was forced to do something beyond his ability? Ray Minkai didn't pay much attention to it. Right now, the only thing that could stop them was the Gao de Gusaion piloted by the androgynous Kudar Kabayan. He would be left to State 0 to deal with. TSK. Were those people's standards so low? It can't even warm you up? State 0 snorted. That's probably just a temporary replacement. After all, as long as the Alaya knowledge system is successfully installed, even an ordinary person can master the way to drive an MS in a short time. Humph. What a convenient system. I still need some time here. Go and finish your business. State 0 chuckled and disconnected from Ray Minkai. Ray Minkai knew that this was probably a good show of a cat playing with a mouse. This was not strange. Since the accident that happened in the strange space, he had been holding back, and now he had the opportunity to come out in his original form to let out some fresh air. Let it vent its anger. I hope that the androgynous guy can hold on for a while. Among the dense wreckage, Gao de Gusaion stood on a huge warship wreckage. Kudar, who was piloting it, was even more cautious as he observed the surrounding situation. That white light, what kind of monster is it? Kudar, who had some doubts about the white light, finally believed the warning of his subordinates after being hit by the androgynous Gusaion. However, from the radar in front of him, his subordinates seemed to have all been killed by the enemy. As for himself, he was entangled by the erratic white light that he couldn't see clearly. Boom! Gao de Guzhen's heavy hammer was heavily smashed on the wreckage under his feet, splashing up a cloud of dust. This seemed to be a provocation? The androgynous Gusaion, who was hiding on a nearby piece of rubble, looked down at Gao de Gusaion and didn't attack immediately. Those who had raised cats or were familiar with felines might know that when felines had their eyes on their prey, they would not attack immediately. Instead, they would lurk quietly, approach their prey, and then attack violently to finish the job. Right now, the androgynous Guzhen's actions were like this. Sure enough, it's covered in a turtle shell. The humans in this world are really interesting. The narrow golden pupils were able to see through Gao de Guzhen's body under the extraordinarily round outer armor. As the rubble moved slowly, the distance between the androgynous Gusaion and Gao de Gusaion also decreased. However, due to the surrounding wreckage and rubble, Gao de Guzhen's radar didn't seem to be able to react immediately. In other words, in order to be able to rely on the protection of the dark universe formed by countless wreckage and gravel, Bloas carried out targeted improvements, resulting in the Tusked Lion 0, which relied on the inertia of the wreckage and gravel itself to achieve the ideal goal of complete stealth. Where is it? Where is that monster? When he picked up the heavy hammer in his hand again, Kodar knew that he couldn't stay any longer. With the passage of time, the mothership that lost the protection of the MS would inevitably be attacked by the enemy. If he didn't rush back in time, he was afraid that he would become a part of the dark universe, in the form of a cold corpse. Boom! Under the androgynous appearance of Gao de Gusaion, a large number of propulsion nozzles erupted and separated Gao de Gusaion from the wreckage of the battleship under his feet. He was ready to push Gao de Gusaion back quickly. However, the moment Gao de Gusaion rose into the air, a flaw appeared. Opportunity! Hiding in the dark, the androgynous Gusaion that was always watching Gao de Guzhen's every move exploded on the spot. He jumped down from Gao de Guzhen's head and hit Gao de Gusaion like a meteor. If this hit Gao de Gusaion again, even if the body was fine, Kodar, who was sitting inside, would inevitably suffer a terrible impact. One must know that this guy didn't change into the pilot suit that he needed to wear during space combat. Found you! Cute monster! However, the androgynous Guzhen's ambush didn't seem to have the expected result. because, at the moment when the androgynous Gusaion rushed out of the shadows, the heavy hammer in Gao de Gyujian's hand instantly changed direction. After Gusaion swung a semicircle, he used the strong inertia to drive Gao de Gusaion to turn around and hit the back of his head. Boom! If Gao de Gusaion and the androgynous Gusaion were in the atmosphere at this moment, the collision between the two would inevitably cause a terrible shockwave and destroy everything in the surroundings along with the air. Boom! In this attack, Gao de Gusaion successfully blocked the androgynous Gyujian's attack. However, he was hit by the terrible impact and was fiercely sent flying. He rolled weakly until he hit a piece of gravel that was only a few times bigger than Gao de Gusaion. Only then did he stabilize his body in the splashing dust. Damn it! What the hell? The impact not only made Gao de Gusaion lose control for a while, it also made Kodar feel dizzy. In his shaky eyes, Kodar finally saw the true body of the white light from the overlapping screen in front of him. A huge and mighty head. Sharp and terrible teeth. Sharp and cold claws. This was the true body of the white light that Kodar saw as his vision gradually became clearer. How is this possible? Lion? How is this possible? Unlike the people on Mars, as a pirate wandering in the universe, Kodar did have a lot of opportunities to come into contact with things from Earth. Even if he did not have much interest in it, he would still learn about it from various channels. But the true body of the white light in front of him had a form that was almost similar to the lion form that Kodar knew. In addition to the size that was comparable to an MS, and the cold steel armor that covered the entire body, and the ability to move freely in a vacuum and have the ability to attack. Creature? Beast-type body? How is this possible? Even with Lars Horn, it is impossible to have such a body. Doubts sprouted in Kodar's mind like bamboo shoots after the rain, but he could not find any answer that could explain the changes in front of him. The many doubts and unsolvable answers made Kodar feel impatient. I don't care. Let's get rid of this monster first. A pirate will always be a pirate. When encountering an unknown enemy, they would either attack or turn and run. And Kodar seemed to belong to the former. Boom! Boom! In the next second, the two cannons on Gao de Gyujian's chest were fired. Two high-explosive bombs went straight to the long-toothed lion. Roar! Seeing this, the long-toothed lion did not retreat but instead moved forward, waving its left and right claws. Before the high-explosive bombs hit it, it exploded on the spot. Boom! The moment the high-explosive bombs exploded, the flames and smoke that erupted not only wrapped around the long-toothed lion, but also gave Kodar a chance. Euler! Die for me! Kodar, who saw the opportunity, screamed and pushed Gyujian's Gao de Gusaion to the limit, and used this push to the limit to drag the heavy hammer in his hand towards the center of the flames and smoke. Kodar clearly remembered that this must be the location of the long-toothed lion's head. According to the experience of fighting with the enemy in the past, this blow would definitely be able to destroy the enemy. Yes, Kodar believed it, because, in the past, the outcome of the battle was like this. The storm stirred up by the heavy hammer in Gundam Gyujian's hand blew away the flames and smoke that had yet to dissipate. It also made Kodar feel the heaviness of this swift and violent strike hitting the target, as well as an incomparably satisfying feeling. However, Kodar subconsciously opened his mouth wide, and the moment he let out a triumphant laugh, the pleasure that filled his chest and abdomen was suddenly stuck. In the dissipating flames, under the impact of the heavy hammer, Li Mu was stunned. A layer of weak, but clearly visible light was firmly placed under the heavy hammer and the long-toothed lion's head. The light that was almost as thin as a piece of paper was actually able to block the heavy hammer that was enough to smash an ordinary MS into pieces in midair, making it unable to move forward and smash the long-toothed lion's head. What's going on? Kodar opened his eyes wide, his hands moved, and Gao de Gusaion once again moved the heavy hammer in his hand and slammed it down. Boom! The heavy force accompanied the fall of the heavy hammer, and fiercely smashed on the layer of light. This attack was ferocious and terrifying, Kodar firmly believed, because the violent inertia feedback had already passed from Gao de Guzhen's hands to the cockpit. But the thin layer of light was still very strong, and there was no sign of it being smashed by the heavy hammer. Doubts emerged again. But more than that, there was anger. I don't care what you are. I will definitely not fail here. I will definitely not die here. The brilliance of the flames crazily shot out from Gao de Guzhen's feet and body. In this almost exceeded the limit of the thrust. Gao de Guzhen instantly jumped up. Then, he suddenly fell, and with the strong falling inertia, he once again waved the heavy hammer in his hand to smash the long-toothed lion's head. Monster! Die for me! Boom! The terrifying power suddenly exploded. Countless dust was shaken up. It buried the fragile light in front of Gao de Guzhen, and also swallowed the long-toothed lion's head. The heavy breathing crazily tore at Kodar's lungs. The screen in front of him was the constantly tumbling dust. Is it done? The answer was no. A faint light quietly emerged from the tumbling dust. And behind this radiance, the pure white Long Fong Lion Zero walked with a relaxed pace, step by step, stepping out of the deep pit that was smashed by Gundam Guzhen. How is it possible? At this moment, Kodar, who had been licking the blood on the tip of his blade, finally knew fear. Although the monster in front of him did not launch many attacks, and just stood there for him to attack, but from the appearance of no injury, the strength of this monster was far beyond his expectations. Fear like a tide came. Kodar could not help but feel that the scythe of death was still on his neck. What kind of joke is this? Hey! Both eyes stared at the pure white long-toothed lion's head. Kodar's roar was both fearful and angry. You are enjoying it, right? Right. Look at the opponent's powerless resistance. Kill the opponent step by step. Kodar's roar resounded through the communication channel. His face was extremely distorted, and his thoughts were pushed to the limit by the scythe of death on his neck. Die! Die! Go to hell! The 4 cannons on Gao de Guzhen's chest suddenly exploded, and once again used the same trick. The result was completely different. 1. Light. A beam of light that was more solid and visible than before blocked the Gundam's projectile. In the light, the shells that were blocked trembled crazily, twisted, until the moment when Gao de Guzhen swung his heavy hammer and rushed over, it actually retreated instantly. Boom! At this moment, in front of Kodar's eyes was an instant, and also a light that froze his life forever. Boom! Looking from afar, a terrible light erupted in front of the long-toothed lion's head, and engulfed Gao de Guzhen. Until the light disappeared, countless pieces of armor that came from Gao de Guzhen's body spread out in front of the long-toothed lion's head like radiation, until it rolled endlessly in the boundless void. And among these pieces of armor, there was a body that had been stripped of all its armor, leaving only a black and swarthy skeleton. It was like a sealed giant falling into a deep sleep. Chapter 698. Da-da-da-da. Gunshots continued to sound from the depths of the tunnel. It was the attack force that rushed in from Fishfire. Ever since Man Rodi and Gao de Guzhen were defeated by Freedom Gauda and Long Fong Lion Zero, the Bloa's pirates also came to the end. Even in the face of the destruction of Man Rodi's team, the Bloa's pirates still had a strong desire to survive in the face of Freedom Gauda, who was extremely terrifying to them. However, no matter how dense and fierce the gunfire on the 2 armored ships of the Bloa's pirates, it still couldn't stop the 2 high-frequency vibration blades in Freedom Gauda's hands from destroying the turrets. With the Bloa's pirates' attack, the turrets on the armored ships were all destroyed by Freedom Gauda. Under the guidance of Freedom Gauda's signal, Fishfire and Warhammer finally passed through the layers of wreckage and appeared in front of the Bloa's pirates. This was the moment of the Bloa's pirates' destruction. Hey, is this true? With just one machine, the most troublesome Bloa's pirates in the Dark Sea route was taken care of? That's sire. Shocking, isn't it? Nemes. This was the conversation between Nemes and Armida when Warhammer entered the battlefield and saw the tragic state of the two Bloa's pirates' battleships, which made most of the Chamber of Commerce tremble in fear. Of course, this conversation had nothing to do with the Ironflower Regiment, because, when they saw the two armored ships that had lost all their weapons and were powerless like lambs waiting to be slaughtered, the Ironflower Regiment knew that their time to perform had finally come. Moreover, this landing battle would not be like the one in Rei Minkai's memory, where the Ironflower Regiment suffered heavy losses and had to swallow their bitter water. Da-da-da-da. While gunshots swept through the tunnel, numerous sparks were constantly jumping around Sino's feet. TSK. You've obviously lost the chance to escape, but your firepower is still so fierce. Zeno was the commander in charge of leading the assault on the Bloa's pirates. According to his and Olga's speculation, in the face of Gao Da's terrible force threat, the pirates that gave Nemes a headache should know what to do. But in reality, when Sino led his team to attack, he found that there was an interception force formed by people like Akihiro and the others, which made Sino and the others feel great pressure. Don't these guys know that we're not their enemies? Sino wanted to secretly observe the situation in the depths of the tunnel, but before he could stick his head out, he was scared back by a barrage of random shots. Thinking for a moment, Sino suddenly remembered that before they set off, Olga had specifically instructed them to bring a certain piece of equipment. It was said that when Rei Minkai was on Jupiter, he had specifically requested for it to be prepared. Although when they set off, Sino couldn't help but take a look out of curiosity, but when he found that the so-called specially prepared stuff wasn't anything rare, it was just some stun grenades that would make people lose their combat effectiveness, he didn't pay much attention to it. But now, under the stubborn resistance of the enemy and the situation of the sealed warship channel, Sino finally remembered the stun grenades that Rei Minkai had prepared. Could it be that you've thought of this from the very beginning? The moment this thought flashed through Sino's mind, a smile of understanding suddenly appeared on Sino's face. Hey you. Take that thing out, yes. That's it. Take out the stun grenade. After casually pointing at his companions behind him, Sino took a deep breath and shouted, "Follow me!" Da-da-da-da. The moment the submachine gun in Sino's hand rang out again, two black shadows flew out from behind Sino and disappeared into the depths of the tunnel in the whistling rain of bullets. The moment two ear-piercing buzzes exploded, the path leading to the capture of Brook, the leader of the Bloa's pirates, was opened. Half an hour later, before the smoke from the assault warship of the Bloa's pirates dissipated, Brook, who looked like a fat pig, was escorted back to Yuhua by Sino and the others, who returned victoriously with smiles on their faces. Olga, Minace, and even Chong Hong, who was captured by Gauda, stood among the Naku of Yuhua and watched as the fat pig was pushed off the shuttle by Sino and the others. Yo! Who is this? Isn't this the famous leader of the Bloa's pirates, Brook? Why are you here as a guest today? Seeing the pile of fat rolling on the floor, Minace, who was an old acquaintance of Brook, walked up and lifted her leg to hook Brook's fat head up a little. You! Minace! You bastard! I won't let you go just like this. Brook was quite stubborn. Even if he was captured by the Ironflower Regiment, he still dared to threaten Minace. Oh? You won't let it go just like this? That's interesting. But the one who came to settle the score with you today isn't me. I'm just here to watch the show and say hello to an old friend. Minace raised her eyebrows and used her right leg to poke Brook's fat head, then turned around and returned to Olga's side. Olga, this pig, what do you want to do with it? Facing Minace's question, Olga slightly lowered his head. He knew that although Brooke was captured by the Iron Flower Regiment, the decision wasn't in his hands. It was even in the hands of any member of the Iron Flower Regiment. At this moment, a series of mechanical roars could be heard. The Free Gouda had returned. The steel giant with unparalleled combat power and iconic steel wings once again appeared in the Fishfire Naku. Thunderous cheers instantly swept through the entire Naku. Especially when Ray Minkai walked out of the Free Gouda's cockpit, the members of the Iron Flower Regiment burst out with even louder and more enthusiastic cheers. Not for anything else. They were cheering for Ray Minkai's feat of single-handedly destroying the Bloa's pirates. This guy's reputation is getting more and more popular. Amidst the cheers, Mayonnaise secretly glanced at Olga. When she found that her adopted brother seemed to be one of the cheers, she shrugged her shoulders. There's nothing bad about it. After all, that person's ambition shouldn't be with the Iron Flower Regiment. On the other side, Brooke, who was lying on the cold floor, couldn't move at all. The moment he saw the Free Gouda, his face turned ashen. No matter how stubborn he was, the moment he saw the mech that destroyed the Bloa's pirates, he knew his end. Ray Minkai, who walked out of the Free Gouda, was surrounded by the crowd and came to Olga and Mayonnaise. The question that Mayonnaise asked Olga before was also placed in front of Ray Minkai. How to deal with it? Ray Minkai was a little surprised. As for how to deal with space pirates, as a member of the Outer Circle, the famous Taban's leader should know very well. After pondering for a moment, Ray Minkai seemed to understand Mayonnaise's approach. Perhaps I'm not qualified to make any judgment on Brooke. Under everyone's gaze, Ray Minkai said this sentence. What? Your Excellency doesn't plan to do anything to this fat pig? While the people of the Iron Flower Regiment broke out into a heated discussion, it also made the ashen-faced Brooke feel a glimmer of hope. Quiet. The one who is most qualified to deal with him here is not me, nor is it anyone from the Iron Flower Regiment or Taban's. It is them. Ray Minkai first raised his hand to stop the discussion, then pointed to the end of the crowd, the group of people who had been looking at this side but didn't dare to come forward. The group of people including Changhong Altran. Seeing them, the people of the Iron Flower Regiment, and even Mayonnaise understood Ray Minkai's meaning on the spot. So, a road leading to Ray Minkai and the immobile Brooke was opened up by the people of the Iron Flower Regiment. Changhong, who was standing in front, froze for a moment. It seemed that he didn't expect the people of the Iron Flower Regiment to push him to the front. Come here. Changhong Altran. If there is anyone on this ship who is qualified to deal with him, the leader of the Brooke pirates, then the most qualified person is only you and all of you. Ray Minkai stretched out his finger and pointed to Changhong, and also pointed to the partners behind Changhong, and also pointed to Brooke, who was lying on the ground. Seeing Ray Minkai's attitude, Brooke's face became even paler. He knew how he usually treated the people of the Iron Flower Regiment, including Changhong. He also knew very well how he casually punished these people who were worthless in the eyes of the world, like garbage. Looking at the pale-faced Brooke, Changhong suddenly felt a trace of pleasure in his heart. But he couldn't make a decision. He was not the only one who felt this way. Even his companions behind him felt the same way. Looking at Brooke's miserable state, their hearts were filled with pleasure. But facing the problem of how to deal with Brooke, they were cowering and couldn't say a word for a long time. This made Olga and even Akahong frown. Has he accumulated too much power? Seeing this scene, Mayonnaise already understood. From Akahong, Mayonnaise didn't see much about the current situation of the Iron Flower Regiment. Perhaps this was because Olga was in front of them, blocking the wind and rain, so Akahong and the others didn't receive the same inhumane treatment as the Iron Flower Regiment in the universe. Akahong. This is the current situation of the Iron Flower Regiment in the universe. Even if they see their owners become prisoners with their own eyes, they still don't dare to make any sound of resistance. Do you see it clearly? Lei Minkai glanced at Minace, then turned to the big guy who stood out among the crowd and said, "Don't worry." Akahong moved the corner of his mouth, but didn't say a word. In fact, he had already faintly sensed the reason why Changhong, who had been separated for a long time, didn't want to recognize him. Roar. Coincidentally, when everyone was waiting for Changhong and the others' decision, a familiar low roar came from the side aisle. It was State Zero. Dong! Dong! Amidst the heavy footsteps, a pure white lion that was as tall as a small mountain slowly walked out of the aisle, following the path that the crowd made, and walked to Rei Minkai's side. At the same time, the sharp-eyed people noticed that the pure white lion seemed to be holding a sword in its mouth, as well as two gorgeous pistols that were more decorative than practical. Clang! The sound of metal hitting the floor gave Brook a fright, but it also allowed him to see a glimmer of hope in his ashen face. Since Changhong and the others can't make a decision, then let's use a competition to decide. Rei Minkai and State Zero looked at each other, then bent down to pick up the two pistols that fell on the floor, and said while checking the pistols, "These are 2 revolvers, and there are 2 bullets here. I will load these 2 revolvers with a bullet, then you, Mr. Brook, and Changhong will each choose a revolver, and when the countdown ends, pull the trigger at each other at the same time." Wait! This. Without waiting for Rei Minkai to finish, Olga opened her mouth and asked, "Yes. Revolver of death. It's cruel, but it's also a fair game, isn't it?" Rei Minkai sneered as he pushed the 2 bullets into the 2 revolvers, and showed the revolvers to everyone. Ka! Ka! As the 2 revolvers were ready, State Zero also popped out a claw and cut the rope that bound Brook. "Come on, Mr. Brook. Whether you live or die, it's all up to you. Isn't this the way of survival for pirates?" Looking at the 2 revolvers in Rei Minkai's hands, Brook slowly stood up and glanced at Minace. "Don't worry, Mr. Brook. I will guarantee that you will live. But the premise is that you can survive the revolver of death." In Rei Minkai's sneer, Brook gritted his teeth and finally chose the revolver in Rei Minkai's right hand. It wasn't that he didn't think of using the revolver to kidnap Rei Minkai, but he didn't have the confidence to use a bullet to fight against the terrifying lion, as well as Minace and the others. "I hope you can keep your promise." Brook, who had no other choice, took the revolver he chose and walked a distance away, waiting for Changhong's choice. Yes, this so-called revolver of death was a scene that Brook was familiar with. In the past, Brook didn't know how many times he had seen it, and even participated in it. In the end, he survived every time. His mind recalled all kinds of luck in the past. Brook took a deep breath, opened his eyes wide, and glared at Changhong. "Come on. I, Brook Kabayan, am right here, waiting for you bunch of worthless scum." Under the accumulated power of the past, Changhong and the others were so scared that they took a few steps back, not daring to look at Brook. This made Zhao Hong extremely anxious, but he couldn't go forward to help. "Calm down, Zhao Hong. Your Excellency may have his own ideas." Although Olga couldn't see Rei Minkai's intention, she still felt some clues. "I say, little brother, you can't retreat, you can't advance. If I were you, I'd rather choose to advance. At least, this way, I'll die like a human, right?" Minace glanced at the anxious Zhao Hong, and also glanced at Olga, who seemed to understand something. After secretly giving Rei Minkai a look, she intentionally or unintentionally knocked on Changhong. Sure enough, under Minace's knock, Changhong seemed to have reacted. Brook, who had accumulated power and was holding the revolver and waiting for him to go forward and die, was extremely anxious, but he still couldn't recognize his brother. And Rei Minkai, who had put on this formation, but his intentions were unclear. It seemed that there was a giant net that was enveloping him. Either he would be trapped in this giant net, unable to break free, until he was strangled to death by the giant net, or he would bravely move forward, fight for a glimmer of hope, tear the giant net, and win a free sky for himself. The choice, at this moment, was made. Chang Hong calmed his mind, but he didn't look at Chang Hong. Instead, he walked in front of Ray Mingkai and reached out to take the remaining revolver from his hand. Then, he walked to the opposite side of Brook. "I'm ready." At this moment, Ray Mingkai's mouth revealed a trace of a smile of appreciation. "Then, let's begin." "Ka ka ka! Ka ka ka!" As soon as Ray Mingkai's voice fell, the two revolvers, under the pull of their respective owners, burst out a series of trigger sounds. However, after two rapid triggers were pulled, a figure that was as fat as a small hill fell to the ground. Chapter 699. The bright red gradually flowed onto the floor. His body, which was as fat as a small mountain, had already fallen onto the cold floor. He could no longer stand on top of Chang Hong and the others like he used to. However, looking at the frightened pig-like face and the pair of eyes filled with disbelief, Chang Hong suddenly felt an unprecedented sense of relief from his shoulders and the heavy body that used to be like a walking corpse. "Pa!" Suddenly, a strong force landed on Chang Hong's shoulder. The still smoking revolver was also taken away from Chang Hong's hands. "Well done, Chang Hong Altran. From today onwards you are all liberated." Re-liberated, a glimmer of light gradually appeared in Chang Hong's dull eyes. We're liberated?" Chang Hong's wooden face didn't even have time to show an expression that matched his words before a tower-like figure hugged Chang Hong tightly in his arms. It's okay. Chang Hong, we're going home." Seeing that Akira Hiro could no longer control his emotions after witnessing everything and hugging Chang Hong tightly in his arms, and then looking at the Iron Flower Regiment members who were quietly wiping their tears, Lei Mingkai smiled slightly, nodded at Olga, and turned to leave the garage with State Zero. What a touching scene! After watching Ray Mingkai and State Zero leave, Minace took a few steps forward and picked up the revolver that was left beside Brook's body. What surprised Minace was that the moment the revolver was in his hands, he felt that something was wrong. The trigger of the revolver had indeed hit the primer of the bullet. However, the primer of the bullet did not fire as smoothly as Minace expected. Slightly frowning, Minace skillfully pulled the trigger back to its original position and opened the cylinder to remove the bullet. He held it in front of his eyes for a while. "It seems that this person's mysteriousness is still beyond my expectations." In front of Minace's eyes, the primer of the bullet was intact and there were no traces of collision at all. Either that, the primer of the bullet did not exist at the root. Either that, or the revolver's trigger had never been pulled from the beginning to the end, nor had it hit a single bullet. However, under the watchful eyes of everyone, how did Ray Mingkai make the trigger unable to fire the primer of the bullet? After thinking for a while, Minace put the bullet back into his pocket and handed the revolver to Olga. "Olga, this might be a good souvenir for those brothers." In fact, Olga also saw Minace's actions. However, he did not think as much as Minace did. As for Olga, no matter what plans Lei Mingkai had in mind, the conclusion of this incident was that the Zhaohong brothers were reunited after being separated for many years. "Brother, I'll pass it to them." Looking at Olga, who took the revolver, Minace smiled and patted him on the shoulder. "All right. The matter here had come to an end. In that case, the next stop was the final stop of this journey. Olga, I hope you're prepared." "Yes, brother." The reunion of the brothers made the Tihua regiment, who did not suffer any losses in this incident, happy. But among the people who witnessed the whole process, there were still people who were puzzled. Gudelia was one of these people. She didn't understand why Ray Mingkai made such a decision in the end. Obviously, for that heinous space pirate, he only needed to. "Are you puzzled, Gudelia?" As if noticing Gudelia's confusion, Lakis, who was watching the scene from afar, asked softly. At first, she was surprised, then she slowly nodded. Gudelia hesitated for a moment, then spoke her thoughts. In fact, we only need to hand that pirate to. The words were at the tip of her tongue, but Gudelia paused. According to her idea, as long as the pirate was handed over to Lars Horn, most of the problems could be solved. However, the current situation of the Tihua regiment was that they offended Lars Horn and were forced to join Daiwa's subordinates to continue their journey to Earth. Therefore, handing over Brook, the heinous pirate leader, to Lars Horn is undoubtedly releasing the tiger back to the mountain. Gudelia, who reacted, glanced at Lux and found that Lux was looking at her. That gaze seemed to have seen through her thoughts. Gudelia's small face also appeared two small red clouds. Gudelia, have you ever thought about Guy's purpose of doing this? What does it mean to Changhong Outland and the others? As Lux raised the question, she added, don't worry. Look, Changhong's appearance now, and his appearance not long ago. Appearance. As soon as Gudelia heard Lux's hint, she seemed to feel something. Especially when she raised her eyes and looked at Changhong and the others, Gudelia's mind instantly recalled the scene when she first saw Changhong and the others. A thin body, an indifferent expression. His eyes were dull and lifeless, and the scars all over the body. This is the epitome of the Terminator people struggling to survive in the universe. This scene was still fresh in Gudelia's mind, but it created a strong impact with the scene before her eyes. People are still the same people. However, the expressions on their faces have become vivid. Indifference, crying. There is also uncontrollable laughter. It became the main theme of their moment. The existence of the Terminator people is undoubtedly equivalent to the reproduction of the slave era recorded in the books of the old era. Only when they, as absolute sellers, dare to pick up their weapons and fire the first shot of resistance against the slave masters who force them into servitude. These people who were subjected to servitude, oppression, and unequal treatment might be able to usher in true liberation. After a pause, Lux looked at Gudelia's puzzled expression and then smiled softly. Perhaps these words are a bit difficult for you. But Kai is very good at using such a sentence to describe it. A sentence. Gudelia looked at Lux with a glimmer of eagerness in her eyes. Yes, a sentence. Where there is oppression, there will be resistance. Lux recalled a sentence that Ray Minkai casually mentioned when she was discussing the Terminator people with Ray Minkai. Where there is oppression, there will be resistance. In an instant, the memories in Gudelia's mind seemed to have received some kind of order and kept surging out from the depths of her memories. Regardless of whether it was the memories that Gudelia remembered or the memories that she had forgotten, they were like bamboo shoots after a spring rain, surging crazily from the depths of the sea of memories. Under the guidance of a certain opportunity, Gudelia saw everything that she had experienced from the perspective of a bystander. Where there is oppression, there will be resistance. Night. The night sky on Earth was starry and bright. It was quiet and beautiful. Under this beautiful night sky, a banquet was held to welcome the two heirs of the Seven Stars families who had returned from their patrol mission at the borders, as well as to celebrate the successful engagement ceremony between two of the Seven Stars families, the Farid family and the Badwin family, had begun. In the luxuriously decorated venue, celebrities from all over Earth, including Lars and Horn, were holding their own wine glasses and gathering in groups of twos and threes in every corner of the venue. They were either discussing loudly or exchanging opinions softly. Beautiful young ladies wearing gowns that showed off their figures and appearances to the fullest were also looking for the knight that they had fallen in love with amidst the chatter. Especially when they saw the two young heirs of the Farid family and the Badwin family, these beautiful young ladies decisively took action and surrounded McGillis and Galio. How enviable! Sir McGillis and Sir Galio. As soon as you appear here, those beautiful young ladies will always be the first to come up to you. Looking at McGillis, who used a rather gentlemanly manner to get rid of the surrounding beautiful young ladies, and walked over, a black-haired young lady standing at the edge of the venue raised her wine glass slightly to greet McGillis. Mr. K. Looking at the black-haired young man who had taken off the familiar black mask and revealed an unfamiliar yet familiar face, McGillis was first stunned, then revealed a friendly smile. Yes. It seems that my act of taking off my mask without permission has put you in a difficult position, Sir McGillis. The black-haired young man smiled lightly, glanced at the young ladies gathered at the side and said jokingly, "Could it be that Sir McGillis is afraid that I will attract the attention of these beautiful and lovely young ladies? Ha 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 ha. Mr. K, don't laugh at me. This is not a joke. If you can attract the attention of these beautiful young ladies here, it would be best." Mr. K heard this and could not help but smile bitterly. "Spare me. I'd rather face the enemy than face these young ladies. This is a big problem." "Is it a problem?" McGillis repeated the adjectives that Mr. K used to describe the young girls. He smiled bitterly but did not say anything else. Perhaps, in his heart, he thought so too. "What are you guys talking about? It's rare to have a banquet. McGillis, don't you want to enjoy it?" You don't look familiar at all. But your voice sounds very familiar. You're that annoying masked man, Mr. K?" At this time, Galileo also came to this corner. Suddenly, this corner that no one paid attention to was noticed by most people because the heirs of the Farid and Barwin families had appeared at the same time. And the black-haired young man who was chatting happily with the heirs of the seven-star families had attracted the attention of most people. Who was he? This question became the question in everyone's mind. "I think Mr. Galeo's suggestion is very good, Sir McGillis. Now that most people's attention is on me, Sir McGillis, don't you want to take this opportunity to leave a beautiful memory?" Mr. K casually glanced at the crowd and casually agreed with Galeo's suggestion. "Look, McGillis, it's rare for me and this masked man to come to an agreement. Are you sure you don't want to give it a try?" Looking at Mr. K and his good friend Galeo's suggestion, McGillis' mouth twitched slightly. He neither agreed nor disagreed. Fortunately, two figures appeared at the banquet and saved McGillis. It was a young, adorably dressed figure. It was a small figure in a wheelchair being slowly pushed into the banquet by a maid. The former was the eldest daughter of the Barwin family, the younger sister of the current heir, Galileo Barwin. She was also the fiancée of the heir of the Farid family, McGillis. Her name was Amelia Barwin. Since the day she was born, she was known by the name of one of the seven-star families, the Barwin family. But as she appeared, the small figure being pushed into the banquet by a maid in a wheelchair was very unfamiliar. She had a head of long flaxen hair that was combed beautifully. Her dress was appropriate and well-fitting. Her demeanor was gentle. And her delicate face. She was like a princess who walked out of a fairy tale. Cute and beautiful. But unfortunately, this fairy tale princess not only had to be pushed into the banquet hall by a maid in a wheelchair, but it seemed that her eyes could not see anything in front of her. Her eyes were closed from beginning to end. Who was she? Different people, but the same question filled everyone's mind as this young girl appeared beside Amelia Barwin. And this question was quickly answered. The three young men gathered in the corner of the banquet hall stepped forward and walked towards Amelia Barwin. The only surprising thing was that the one walking in front was the unfamiliar black-haired young man, not McGillis or Galileo. "Good evening. The fair and lovely lady Amelia Barwin. I'm Lucio Lamperugi. Thank you very much for taking care of my sister, Nunnally Lamperugi." Under everyone's gaze, the black-haired young man came in front of Amelia and bowed to the young Amelia in a friendly and solemn manner. The friendly and solemn etiquette stunned Amelia for a moment, then she showed a bright smile and responded. "Hello, Your Excellency Lucio Lamperugi. This is nothing. I also like Sister Nunnally very much. So, you're welcome." Ever since Mr. K. Lucio found Nunnally, who was sleeping in a crystal coffin, in the meteor fall area on Mars, and returned to Earth with the help of McGillis, the sleeping Nunnally was placed in the Bardo family's residence, waiting for the moment of awakening. Tonight was the day that Lilina would awaken from her slumber. After the black-haired young man nodded to Amelia, he moved his gaze and looked at his sister who had been separated from him since that day. "We are finally reunited, Nunnally." In the wheelchair, the blind girl gradually showed a gentle smile. "Yeah, brother." Chapter 700. In the dark channel full of wreckage and gravel, body bags wrapped in cold bodies were quietly sliding into the depths of the dark channel. Perhaps they had once been awe-inspiring in this waterway when they were alive, or perhaps they had trembled under the feet of experts and acted as accomplices to the evildoers. But in the face of death, they were all wrapped in body bags and silently slid into the deathly silent and cold void. This was a funeral that completely buried the Brua's pirate. Looking at the body bags that slid into the void, the history of the Brua's pirates also came to an end, and the people enslaved by the Brua's pirates and Bruas also ushered in liberation. However, due to the upcoming itinerary of the Ironflower Regiment, they were unable to bring the Valurians who had been freed from the Bloa's pirates to Earth. For this reason, after Olga asked for the opinion of Ray Minkai, he decided to hand over the 2 armored ships and the transport ship left by the Brua's pirates to the former Brua's pirates led by Akihiro's younger brother, Changhong Artran. Under the leadership of Akihiro's deputy, Dante Meguro, they would return to the headquarters on Mars first and make arrangements. "They're far away. Akihiro, did you say goodbye?" Outside the porthole, the engine fire that represented the return to the headquarters on Mars gradually became small and invisible. Ray Minkai's sigh also reached Akihiro's ears. "Sir. Sorry for troubling you." Akihiro was probably just a dull person. Even if he didn't react at that time, he gradually understood a little bit of the matter in retrospect afterward. "Troubling you? Why would I bother?" "Akihiro, don't think too much. It was just a game." Ray Minkai glanced at Akihiro's serious look and then smiled. "Okay. Go back and prepare. The body with only the skeleton should be arranged for you. Be mentally prepared. That's the same as Barbados, an airframe that's also known as Gundam." Akihiro was surprised. He didn't seem to have expected that such a body would be assigned to him. After all, when they retrieved Gao de Gusion, everyone was shocked by the black skeleton of Gao de Gusion. The originally smooth outer armor was completely peeled off, completely exposing the pitch-black skeleton that was wrapped in it. In the Ironflower Regiment, no one could imagine what kind of attack could perfectly peel off the outer armor without leaving any damage to the skeleton. Of course, this question would not be answered, because, at that time, Gao de Gusion's opponent was the Long Fong Lion Style 0. It was also because the battle between the two sides took place somewhere in the wreckage gravel belt that no one could see. That was why the Long-Fanged Lion, State 0, was able to use the Lambda drive system from the all-metal world to easily defeat the Gundakin and dismantle its ridiculous armor. "Are you saying that you don't like Gao de Gusion because he doesn't have any external armor?" Akihiro. Looking at the surprised Akihiro, Ray Minkai was suddenly in a good mood and teased this dull boy. Especially in the Steelpula world and the previous Uncle version, under the influence of Akihiro's memories, which still made up for the regrets in his life, Ray Minkai seemed to have more bad taste in his heart. "No. I didn't mean it like that. It's just that, in this case, wouldn't that body be temporarily unable to move?" Akihiro moved his mouth and said his thoughts hesitantly. "Is that it? Don't worry. After we arrive at the Colonial Satellite Group, Nemes will communicate with the Daiwa's branch in .6 to modify Gao de Gusion. Don't worry. It won't take a long time." .6? Akihiro thought for a while and subconsciously looked at the void where the engine fire of the assault armored ship returning to the Mars headquarters could no longer be seen. He nodded silently. Finally, after a series of events, the Ironflower Regiment finally reached the second half of the journey. .2? It seems that history will repeat itself? In the courtyard where sunlight scattered, a girl in a dress was sitting quietly in a wheelchair, enjoying the warmth brought by the sun. Perhaps for the girl, this simple thing had not been enjoyed for a long time. She didn't know where this feeling came from. She only knew that on a certain dark night, she should have been at home, but she was startled awake by a familiar yet completely different voice. Then, she lost all sense of the outside world, until she once again heard her older brother, Lucio's voice. "Sister Lionheart, how do you feel? Is there any discomfort?" A light breeze blew in the courtyard, bringing the two figures into the courtyard. From the young voice, it could be heard that this was the first friend the girl made after she woke up. A girl who was much younger than her, but was already engaged to someone else. Amelia Bardown. She seemed to be the daughter of the Badwin family, a seven-star family. Towards this so-called seven-star family, Lionheart was very confused. In the world she was familiar with, there didn't seem to be any seven-star family. "What's wrong? Sister Lionheart, are you feeling unwell? Or is the wind too strong here?" Seeing that the girl in the wheelchair did not respond, the girl in the dress walked over to the wheelchair and carefully looked at the girl's face. "No. I'm fine. It's just that I'm thinking too much. Thank you for your concern, Amelia." Lionheart smiled lightly. Unexpectedly, that gentle smile made Amelia's face turn red, and she subconsciously sighed. "It's really beautiful. How great would it be if Sister Lilina could see with your eyes?" After saying that, Amelia was stunned. Because, from the first day Lionheart came to the Badwin family, Amelia knew that the girl in front of her was not only unable to walk, but also unable to see anything. "Sorry. Amelia hurriedly apologized, but Lionheart raised her right hand and gently stopped her. "Amelia, you don't have to care. I'm already used to it. Compared to this, have you seen my brother?" Amelia's attention was immediately diverted by Lionheart. The girl slightly puffed up her cheeks and complained to the girl in dissatisfaction. "Sister Lionheart, don't you know? In the morning, my good-for-nothing brother suddenly dragged Lucio out of the house. I heard that they were going to some colonial satellite. When they met me at the door, Lucio even asked me to apologize to you. Is that so? Brother is going to be busy again." Lionheart seemed to be a little disappointed. Perhaps it was the reluctance to part after being separated for a long time. This made Amelia couldn't help but pull Lionheart's right hand and comforted her. "Sister Lionheart, don't worry. Maybe my useless brother just wants Lucio to help him. They will be back soon. And, I know, brother will be back soon." At the same time, in Lars Horn spaceport in geostationary orbit, two figures walked down from the shuttle one after the other. They followed the instructions and walked towards the port in another area. There, the cruiser belonging to McGillis and Galileo was parked. Now, since McGillis was on vacation, Galileo naturally became the temporary captain of the cruiser. "Why, Sir Galileo, you pulled me here from Earth early in the morning, just to see you show off your might in the so-called exercise?" Looking at Galileo striding in front, the black-haired boy behind him mercilessly mocked the man who pulled him from the warm Earth early in the morning to this cold universe. "Yes, exercise, exercise. It's just in name. Lulu. No. Mr. K, with your intelligence, I'm sure you've already guessed what I'm thinking." Galileo stopped. When he wanted to directly call the other person's name, he suddenly changed the way he addressed him. "In name? I didn't expect Sir Galileo, as the heir of Bardwin, to be interested in these things. What? Do you lack merit?" The black-haired boy raised his eyebrows and casually leaned against the wall. From his tone, it was not difficult for Galileo to hear that he was mocking his actions. As the heir of the Bardwin family, one of the seven-star families, Galileo didn't need to get involved in these messy things at all. He only needed to follow the mission given to him by the family when the time was right, and he would be able to ascend to the top seat of Lars Horn. "No. This is not getting involved. Mr. K. This is a battle to wipe away our shame. Those space rats on Mars made us suffer such humiliation. They must pay the price. Now, under the surveillance of McGillis's spies, that group of space rats entered the colonial satellite group. Galileo didn't care. No, it should be said that he was already immune to the black-haired boy's mockery. Lucio looked at Galileo, who spoke his thoughts calmly. He lowered his eyes slightly and smiled. A battle to wipe away our shame? From the looks of it, it did seem to be the case. But, are you ready for it? That airframe will definitely appear. That body? Galileo frowned slightly. That's right. Lucio's words were not wrong. Although that terrifying body didn't appear many times, every time it appeared, it would rush into the battlefield with a posture that was enough to shatter Galileo's understanding of MS and destroy the opponent easily. No matter how hard Galileo searched for information when he returned to the headquarters of Gjallarhorn, and how he flipped through the documents passed down from the era of the sacrificial war, there was only one result. The mysterious body that had the terrifying speed of most bodies did not exist in Lars Horn's literature, nor in any of the folklore about the sacrificial war on Earth. It was as if this Mecha that had left a deep impression on everyone as soon as it appeared had suddenly appeared out of nowhere. But, even if that body is here, Lars Horn, no, I will definitely go. This is a battle to wipe away our shame. Galileo was silent for a moment. In the face of the fog that could not be cleared, he still made the same decision. Is that so? Since it's a battle to wipe away our shame, then please hurry up, Mr. Galileo. Mr. McGillis is not the kind of person who will wait for the holidays to end. Luxia didn't want to, or rather, he didn't have the intention to stop Galileo's actions. While expressing his opinion, he also said some meaningful word. However, Galileo seemed to misunderstand Lucio's meaning. Yeah. After all, my sister is very clingy. Although she is McGillis' fiancée, McGillis must be worried about this. So, before McGillis is worried, let's solve this matter as soon as possible. You're right. Starting from Mars, halfway to Jupiter, and then from Jupiter to Earth, after a journey that exceeded expectations, they finally arrived at the end. Olga, who was standing on the bridge of the Fishfire vessel, looked at the approaching colonial satellite and was slightly relieved. Don't be too relaxed, Olga. This is already within the range of the Earth. Lei Minkai looked at Eugene, Sino, and the others who were pointing at the cylindrical colonial satellite in the distance and cheering, and reminded Olga. Lei Minkai knew that before this, Minace should have also reminded Olga. But there were some things that Minace didn't know and couldn't give advice. Because even Minace himself didn't know these things. Are you talking about the difference between the Earth and the outer circle? Brother Minace has already mentioned this to me. I'll let everyone pay attention. Sure enough, after Lei Minkai reminded her, Olga took the initiative to repeat what Minace told them. This was not surprising. Lei Minkai pointed outside. Olga was confused, but she still followed Lei Minkai and left the bridge. The two people who left didn't seem to attract the attention of Eugene, Seno, and the others. Even if someone noticed, it was only 3 suns and moon alone. And with 3 suns and moon's personality, even if they were confused, it would disappear in the next second. They would wait for Olga to speak, and then they would go and beat the enemy. The moment the automatic door isolated the noise of the bridge, Olga looked up at Lei Minkai and waited for Lei Minkai to continue. Olga, be prepared to fight the enemy. What surprised Olga was that the first thing Lei Minkai asked him to do was to prepare for battle. Is it Lars Horn? No. Chapter 701. The guiding spaceship from .2 slowly flew to Yu Hua's side. A passionate message was transmitted from the guiding spaceship to Yu Hua's bridge and into the ears of Olga and the others. They were praises for the hero, and they were not stingy with their words of praise. However, compared to Eugene and the others who were flattered, Olga's face gradually became serious. Everything was going according to what Lei Mingkai had told him in private. The Iron Flower Regiment's transportation mission that Daivaz had entrusted to them was not mineral resources or daily necessities. Instead, it was a terrifying item that could affect the subsequent development of the situation. Yes, terrifying object. Although Lei Mingkai didn't say it explicitly, and Olga didn't personally check what the goods in Yuhua's warehouse were. But under Lei Mingkai's hint, Olga already guessed something. A clue that even Olga himself couldn't believe. Your Excellency, is this your test for me? Logically speaking, if the matter in front of the Iron Flower Regiment was as serious as Olga imagined, as a shareholder, Lei Mingkai wouldn't be able to escape responsibility. However, under such circumstances, Lei Mingkai, Lux, and Gudelia left Yuhua and went to 3 before Yuhua went to 2. In the name of shopping, Olga recalled the meaningful look that Lei Mingkai gave him before he left. Olga couldn't bring himself to ask for help from Lei Mingkai. Looking at 2 that gradually became bigger and clearer in front of him, Olga's mind kept replaying everything that had happened since the departure from Jupiter. No, since the departure from Mars. No, suddenly, Olga's mind was shaken. A condition that he had never thought of popped out from the depths of his mind, as if it was the work of gods and demons. If Gudelia Lana Bernstein, the revolutionary girl regarded as the hope of the Martians, is man-made, then, this thought kept rolling in Olga's mind, and with this assumption as the center, it quickly spread to all the possible hypotheses and pushed forward until it pointed to a terrifying fact. Iron Flower Regiment. Perhaps, in the near future, he would become a sacrifice in this accident driven by an invisible hand. Thinking of this, Olga's body trembled, and a trace of horror appeared in his eyes. He perhaps understood. He finally understood why Lei Mingkai had left first, and why he had given him a meaningful look before he left. As his enlightened thoughts continued to expand and move forward, a relieved and confident smile quietly appeared on Olga's face. Is that so? Is that so? Mr. Lei Mingkai, are you really testing me? Testing whether I can be the leader of the Iron Flower Regiment? The smile on Olga's face gradually deepened, and his laughter grew louder and louder. It was so loud that Eugene and the others were shocked and looked at Olga in unison. Good. Very good. That's it. Everyone, now let's complete the last mission before going to Earth. Eugene and the others looked at each other in confusion. They couldn't understand why Olga had become so enthusiastic, but they still waved their fists and loudly echoed their leader's words. Oh! Mission complete. On the other side, Lei Mingkai, Lakis, and the others, who left Yuhua first, also set foot on the port of 3. Is this 3? It looks pretty good. Atlas and Gudelia, who set foot on a colonial satellite for the first time, looked at the city built around the inner wall in surprise. No matter how they looked up, they could definitely see the buildings above their heads, as well as the cars moving along the road. It was their first time seeing such a wonderful scene. As for Lei Mingkai and Lakis, they didn't find it strange to see them. Lei Mingkai aside, Lakis, who had lived on a colonial satellite since she was young, was already used to everything in front of her. Okay. We'll have plenty of chances to see it in the future. Today, let's hurry up and complete the mission. Lux clapped her hands, and after attracting Atlas and Gudelia's attention, she began to assign them missions. Although Lei Mingkai only needed to ask, and Olga wouldn't refuse his request, Lei Mingkai still used the reason of needing to buy cleaning supplies to clean the ship's environment as an excuse to leave Yuhua early. Therefore, everyone's mission was to split up and buy the items they were responsible for according to the list. Thus, the people who set foot on 3 split into 3 groups and went about their own business. Seeing Gudelia, Fumiton, Trisun, and Atlas, who volunteered to follow Biscat to see his brother, Lei Mingkai and Lakis looked at each other and returned to the port. Kai, is something going to happen here? Although Lakis didn't say it out loud, she already knew some things. Ray Minkai didn't take the initiative to tell her this, but Lakis deduced it based on what she saw. It must be noted that the atmosphere above .3 wasn't too friendly. When Ray Minkai, Lakis, and the others appeared at .3's port, the gazes around them were not as vigilant as when they saw strangers coming from afar. Instead, they were more cautious and distant. Probably. But the main location might not be here. Ray Minkai secretly scanned the surroundings and discovered that there were at least 3 pairs of eyes hidden in the dark watching them. This formation probably couldn't be considered guarding against outsiders. Iron Flower Regiment. Lakis noticed Ray Minkai's action, but nodded at Ray Minkai without batting an eyelid. In an instant, the two of them tacitly linked arms and pointed at the port. Then, they casually found an excuse to turn around and leave the port, walking toward the commercial district. From afar, it was as if they were a couple who were amazed by something they had never seen before and couldn't help but have fun. Have we been discovered? In the shadows, a graceful figure sized up the few corners that could possibly be her peers and smiled slightly. As expected of the night that L cares about. This vigilance is indeed enough to make L more alert. Then, let's wait and see. As a high-end residential district and the commercial district built around it, it was indeed more prosperous and lively than Mars Christ district. Just from the expressions and clothes of the pedestrians, it could be seen that the standard of living here was far higher than Mars Christ district. Looking at the well-dressed people coming and going, Lakis didn't have much surprise on her face. Instead, she revealed a trace of seriousness. Although the conversation between the two at the port was affected by the outside world and didn't continue, Lakis already knew about the surging movements hidden in the shadows of these colonial satellites. The prosperous scene in front of her would probably turn into nothing soon. Lakis looked at Lei Minkai, who was holding her little hand. The corners of her mouth twitched, but she didn't say anything. Lakis, there's a small shop in front. Let's go in and have a seat. Ray Minkai had already noticed Lakis's strange behavior. However, he didn't say anything. As Lakis Klein, Ray Minkai believed that she could understand and make her own decision. And in front of them, there was a long-lost friend waiting for them. Ding! As the wooden door was pushed open, the bell hanging on the corner of the door also shook. Looking around, it was an elegantly decorated tea house. Other than the necessary tea set, there were only a few portraits on the wall and ribbons used as decoration. At first glance, the whole tea house looked very simple and quiet. Long time no see, my friend. Are you interested in coming over for a drink? Seeing Ray Minkai and Lakis walk into the tea house, the black-haired young man sitting at the innermost table of the tea house also stood up and invited them. Then, as if he wanted to gain the trust of Ray Minkai, the black-haired young man continued. Don't worry. The owner of this tea house has already been sent out by me. Now, there's only me and 2 distinguished guests in this tea house. The black-haired young man who invited them was none other than Lu Lucio, who met Ray Minkai on Mars nearly half a year ago. What Ray Minkai didn't expect was that Lu Lucio would appear in .3 at this time. The mystery behind this wasn't that simple, right? Long time no see. Lu Lucio. I didn't expect you to be here. Lei Minkai, who was familiar with Lu Lucio's character, didn't think too much about it. He quickly accepted Lu Lucio's invitation and sat opposite him. Long time no see. Your Highness, aren't you going to sit here? The seats here are enough for 3 people. Lu Lucio smiled and looked at Lakis, who still hadn't sat down. My name is Lakis Klein. I'm not a princess, Your Highness. Lakis frowned slightly, but she still sat down next to Ray Minkai. Is that so? But this guy always has all kinds of princesses around him. Lu Lucio didn't care about Lakis's rebuttal. Instead, he casually threw the conflict to Ray Minkai. In the end, Lu Lucio was greatly disappointed. This was because Lux wasn't angered by Lu Lucio's seemingly normal words that were actually meant to secretly provoke conflict. Instead, she nodded her head calmly. No, it should be said that she nodded in agreement. Your Highness is right. I feel the same way. Her expression of great agreement immediately gave Rei Minkai a headache. At the same time, Lu Lucio was stunned. Ha 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 ha. Interesting. Interesting. Really interesting. As expected of the Knight of Guardian. Truly amazing. Amidst Lu Lucio's laughter, Rei Minkai frowned. He wanted to retort, but couldn't find a reason to. In the end, he could only try to change the topic. Alright, since you're here, does that mean you've found the person you're looking for? Looking at Lu Lucio, Rei Minkai thought of the person he saw in that space. That delicate and pitiful face that made people feel sorry for her. Lu Lucio nodded, his face revealing an excited expression. Yes, I've finally found her. I've finally found Lilina. Rei Minkai, this is all thanks to you. Is that so? Wait. Rei Minkai, who spoke subconsciously, suddenly stood up. He remembered. He remembered very clearly. In the instant that he escaped from that space, the face that he saw was not Nunnally at all. Definitely not. Why did Lu Lucio insist that it was Lilina? That's Lilina? The Lilina v. Britannia that not only you, but even the Britannia Empire is looking for. A look of disbelief appeared on Rei Minkai's face. Lu Lucio nodded with a calm expression. Yes, the person I found in that space is Lilina. Other than her, I haven't seen anyone else. Lu Lucio's expression was serious, and his tone was very firm, making it impossible for others to see any clues. But Rei Minkai faintly felt a trace of strangeness. A trace of strangeness that he didn't know where to start from. Rei Minkai tried to analyze this trace of strangeness while casually asking, "Is that so? Then, what about Lilina? I wonder where Lilina is now? If possible, I'd like to see her." But unexpectedly, such a casual sentence was caught by Lu Lucio. Lilina? She's in a good condition now. She's already woken up from a long sleep. But what kind of identity are you going to use to see her? You have to know, before that, Lilina has never seen you. Pausing, Lu Lucio's eyes revealed a trace of ridicule. Is it the identity of the Empire's Knight Captain? Or is it the identity of the husband of Lilina's royal sister, Empress Euphemia L. Britannia? Cough cough. Suddenly, Lu Lucio's casual words almost made Rei Minkai, the Empire's Knight Captain, choke to death. You, Lu Lucio, you, it seems that after reuniting with your sister, you're in a good mood. You can even make such a joke. But your appearance here this time, I'm afraid it's not as simple as catching up, right? What made Lu Lucio feel regretful was that the good show that was supposed to happen disappeared like smoke under Lux's indifference. Humph. Forget it. In the blink of an eye, Lu Lucio put away the idea of watching Rei Minkai's good show. Rei Minkai. On Earth, there's the arrangement of the Parliament of Destiny. Suddenly, the atmosphere took a turn for the worse. The sky above the tea-house was shrouded in heavy air pressure. What Rei Minkai didn't expect was that Lu Lucio actually said the name of the Parliament of Destiny. In addition, I inherited his seat. Now, I'm a member of the Parliament of Destiny, Mr. K. Chapter 702. The Parliament of Destiny. The Parliament of Destiny. Rei Minkai knew very well what these two titles symbolized. What surprised Rei Minkai was that Lu Lucio would admit so frankly that he had become one of them. Why? Is it unexpected? A playful smile appeared on Lu Lucio's face. Yes, unexpected. Very unexpected. Rei Minkai slowly took in a deep breath and sighed. That's right. Although we had a hunch that we would meet you in other worlds after you disappeared, we didn't expect you to become one of them. Moreover, it's as his successor. Naturally, he was the one who took everything away from Lu Lucio. Later, under the joint efforts of Rei Mingkai and Lu Lucio, they killed Emperor Lu Lucio in one fell swoop. A young man from a different time and space, but also Lu Lucio v. Britannia. No. This is not an accident. Rei Mingkai. I am Lu Lucio Lamperugi, but I am also Lu Lucio v. Britannia. Inheriting his legacy, or becoming him, is inevitable. After saying this sentence lightly, Lu Lucio seemed to have lost the intention to continue the conversation. Okay. Let's stop talking about the past. Knight, be vigilant. Here, it's not as simple as you think. The arrangements that the Parliament of Destiny buried on Earth have begun to move. Your arrival is nothing more than an accident. After that, Lu Lucio got up and prepared to leave. You are not Lu Lucio Lamperugi. However, before Lu Lucio could take a few steps, Rei Mingkai's words suddenly made Lu Lucio stop. Knight, why do you think so? Lu Lucio turned around and looked at Rei Mingkai with interest. It seemed that he was looking forward to something. Eyes. Rei Mingkai looked at Lu Lucio without fear. Anyone who was familiar with Lu Lucio Lampiro would know that under any circumstances, it was best not to look at Lu Lucio in the eye. Otherwise, without knowing or even being aware of it, one would succumb to Lu Lucio, who had the power of GESS. Eyes. Lu Lucio was taken aback, then laughed. The carefree laughter gradually changed from a slightly calm young man's voice, distorted, until it became a clear and pleasant female voice. It's really delightful. You're worthy of being the knight he valued. I didn't expect you to really see the difference between us. The contrast between Lu Lucio's face and a woman's voice made Rei Mingkai frown for a moment before relaxing his brows. You're not Lu Lucio. You should be CC. The witch who has been following Lu Lucio. You guessed right. The knight who protects the princess. When the laughter sounded again, the mask disguised as Lu Lucio was taken off, revealing the lustrous emerald green hair and a delicate face. CC. The witch who has the power of code and can give others the power of GESS. After the Britannia Empire's rebellion, and after Euphemia ascended the throne, she disappeared with Lu Lucio. Perhaps Rei Mingkai should have thought of this long ago. On Mars, from the moment he met Lu Lucio, this mysterious witch was probably already around Lu Lucio, watching everything with her eyes. Don't worry. I don't mean any harm. Today, I'm just fulfilling that guy's request. At the same time, under the guidance of the spaceship, the docked Fishfire welcomed the intense loading and unloading industry. However, as the leader of the Ironflower Regiment, Olga only brought Eugene and the female accountant, Maribid Stapleton, who had been very low-key since her arrival and was almost overshadowed by Lakis, down the Fishfire together and met with the staff of .2. This Maribid Stapleton had come at the behest of Mahkumad. However, her arrival didn't cause any disturbance in Yuhua. On the contrary, she seemed to have received some instructions. She always buried herself in her work and never participated in any activities outside of work. It was as if she had placed herself outside of the core team of the Ironflower Regiment. For this, Olga was happy to be relaxed. After all, no matter who it was, they didn't like people who were sent by Divac to monitor them appearing in front of them. I didn't expect you to be from the Ironflower Regiment. You're even younger than we thought. Seeing Olga and Eugene's young faces, the staff member of .2 was surprised. Even though Olga and Eugene had experienced many battles before they came to the Earth, they were still very strong. But the smoke from the battles couldn't hide Olga and Eugene's overly young faces. What? Is the truth that the Ironflower Regiment is made up of young guys that surprised you? Eugene was very unhappy. She didn't like the fact that the staff used her and her friends' ages to talk about things. No, I didn't mean that. I just think the legendary heroes are much younger than we thought. Heroes? Hearing the staff's apology, Olga frowned slightly. Sure enough, there was a hidden truth that they didn't know. Olga was very clear about the composition of the Iron Flower Regiment, including herself. If not for Lei Mingkai's previous reminder, perhaps Olga would have been just like Eugene, flattered by the other party's flattery. But now Olga had other thoughts. Sorry. Olga raised her hand to stop the conversation between Eugene and the staff, and said calmly, after a long voyage, Yuhua is about to undergo maintenance. I need to go back and arrange the maintenance. So, I'll have to rely on you for the loading and unloading work. Although this reason was a bit abrupt, the staff couldn't find any fault with it. They knew about the legend of the Iron Flower Regiment. No matter how the legend spread here, and what kind of explanation there was, as long as they saw the scars on Yuhua, they would probably subconsciously associate it with the tragic battles described in the legend of the Iron Flower Regiment. That's true. After all, everyone in the Iron Flower Regiment fought with the damn Lars Horn all the way here. After the staff looked at each other, they also agreed with Olga's excuse. Olga let out a sigh of relief when the short meeting ended so smoothly, but the sense of urgency in his heart also became heavier. What's wrong, Olga? Obviously, we still have the next step of the handover. Eugene's confusion also got the approval of the female accountant next to her. Yes. Regiment Commander. Our next step of the handover still needs to be signed by both sides to take effect. Mary Bede also said the same. But the two's confusion couldn't change Olga's mind. No. There's no need for the next step of the handover. Now we must immediately return to Yuhua and gather everyone to prepare for the next emergency. What? Emergency? Eugene and Mary Bede said in surprise together. Yes. Emergency. The water here is very deep. We must be prepared. Just as Olga brought Eugene and Mary Bede out of the warehouse and turned to the plank road to Yuhua, an armored vehicle suddenly appeared in everyone's sight. It was Lars Horn of Gorda. As long as one saw the iconic helmet and the uniform with the Lars Horn of Gorda logo, they would immediately recognize the armed organization that had ruled human society for hundreds of years. Lars Horn of Gorda? Eugene was shocked and immediately moved closer to Olga subconsciously. And Mary Bede, who reacted a step slower, was pulled to a corner by Olga to avoid being discovered by the armored vehicle that was coming this way. Don't make a sound. It's Lars Horn of Gorda. Seeing the armored vehicle that drove past in front of them and didn't seem to discover them, Olga's heart couldn't help but feel a sense of realization. Olga, this is... Don't talk first. We must hurry back to Yuhua now. However, before they could take a step, a burst of gunfire suddenly sounded, constantly hovering above Olga and the others. Don't look back. Hurry! Olga shouted coldly. Eugene and Mary Bede quickly followed Olga's footstep. This was an attack. No. This was an attack that had been planned for a long time. Olga finally understood the meaning of Lei Mingkai's gaze as he listened to the increasingly intense gunshots behind him and the low growls coming from the road in front of him. The Iron Flower Regiment was used as a tool. Even if the Iron Flower Regiment had become a brother organization with Tabans on Jupiter, but on a certain level, it was still a chess piece that could be discarded at any time by those big shots. Now, the battle that was happening behind them was just like that. Your Excellency, is it the same on your side? The atmosphere in the city suddenly became a little cold. Moreover, it also became a little anxious and irritated. Kai, there's a battle over there with that group of kids. The moment Lei Mingkai and Lakis walked out of the tea house, State Zero's voice sounded. As expected. Lei Mingkai turned to look at the tea house, looking at the figure hidden behind the window, and couldn't help but wonder if he was also involved in the battle that happened in .2. Kai. Has it started? Lakis, who noticed the change in the atmosphere, looked around. Yes. It has started in .2. Let's hurry back. The laborers who resented the oppression from the upper class for a long time would definitely not let go of this high-end community and the bustling business district that was built around it. Let's go. See. who was sitting in the tea-house, saw the two of them leave in a hurry. The witch naturally knew what was going to happen next, but she would not and had no reason to stop it from happening. Has it started? The plan of those lunatics in the Apocalypse Council. After casually pouring himself a cup of fragrant black tea, C. sipped it slowly while looking at the windowsill where panicked passers-by passed by from time to time. Da-da-da-da. Gunshots rang out like a storm. Amid the roars of the oppressed laborers, the whistling bullets were shot at the soldiers of Gjallarhorn, who had exposed their long-planned plan under the pretext of inspecting the goods. Although the training of the laborers was far less than the training of Lionheart's soldiers, as the saying went, random fists can kill an old master. The number of laborers far exceeded the number of Lionheart's soldiers who came to inspect the goods. Moreover, when inspecting the goods, the laborers were in groups of 2 or 3. They stood on the ground, on the shelves, and even on both sides of the door. Therefore, the moment the battle broke out, Lionheart's soldiers who were protected by armored personnel carriers were suppressed by bullets from all directions and could only retreat into the armored personnel carriers to ask for help. Boom! As the armored personnel carriers were destroyed, the battle finally reached its climax. Lionheart's mobile soldiers rushed in. Woo-woo! Amidst the shrill air defense sirens, there seemed to be a faint explosion at the port of .3. Kai! It has spread here, we must speed up. Lakis. Ray Minkai looked at the people around him, who were frightened by the air defense sirens, and nodded. Next, because of the riot that happened in .3, the port would be blocked. Then, Lionheart's fleet station nearby would use the excuse of suppressing the riot as an excuse to leave. This is a farce that has been planned for a long time. On the other side of the city, Gudelia and Fumiton were staying in a hotel that was not affected by the riot for the time being. 3 suns and moons, who were supposed to be with them, temporarily left because they had to contact Fishfire. Miss, please focus. I'm afraid something unexpected has happened here. Fumiton looked at the panicked crowd outside the window and the faint smoke rising from the port area. This was a battle. A battle to bury Gudelia Lana Bernstein, the revolutionary girl who was regarded as the hope of the Martians. Before arriving on Earth, Fumiton, who controlled Fishfire's external communication channel, had already received an order. An order about the ultimate fate of Gudelia Lana Bernstein. The pair of hands hidden behind the scenes instructed Fumiton to ensure that Gudelia Lana Bernstein, the girl who symbolized hope, was shot to death by Lionheart in the riot in .3. Fumiton hesitated in the face of such an order. Furthermore, Fumiton had a feeling that even if he acted according to the order, he would still fail. This was a woman's intuition. Even though it was a bit mysterious, Fumiton believed in his heart. Suddenly, a figure carrying a pink-haired girl in a princess carry appeared in front of Fumiton. At this moment, Fumiton seemed to have found the answer. Don't tell me he's the reason Gudelia died here. Chapter 703. In a corner next to the hotel where Gudelia and the others were staying, a man with a golden mask and long silver-gray hair stood there, staring at the deserted door. According to the original plan, he wanted to meet Gudelia Lana Bernstein. This revolutionary girl was regarded as the hope of the Martians. No, it should be said that she was regarded as the hope of all humans who had heard of her deeds. However, just a few minutes ago, the arrival of a man and a woman made him dispel this idea. Because he knew that as long as the man and woman appeared here, what he was worried about would not happen. Gudelia Lana Bernstein, the girl who was regarded as the hope, would not sacrifice herself to save others. As long as this was the case, the future he hoped for would happen. Sure enough, it's just as you expected? Mr. K. The night you spoke of really appeared. After the man smiled, he glanced at the deserted door again, then turned and left. Although he had lost the fun of seeing Gudelia and exposing the traitorous maid who had been by her side all this while and acted like a loyal servant on the surface, he had still achieved his goal in the end. Then, it's time for me to leave here. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good for me to appear in public like this after the port is sealed off. In the shadows, the tall man's back gradually disappeared, leaving only the eyes scanning the surrounding corners. Did he leave? Standing by the window of the aisle, Ray Minkai withdrew his gaze from searching the surrounding street. Just now, he noticed that someone was looking here, but that gaze quickly disappeared. Moreover, Ray Minkai did not detect any malice from it. Kai. Before we arrived, Mitsui and you left here first. They seemed to be looking for Biscat and Atlas who lost contact. When Leika's voice came, she brought the news of Mitsui and you. Looking back, in addition to Lakis, Gudelia and Fumiton also followed behind Lakis. Ray Minkai nodded slightly, but he did not look at Gudelia. Instead, he looked at Fumiton. Fumiton, have you made the arrangements on your side? Gudelia's words were nothing out of the ordinary, but they set off 1,000 waves in Fumiton's heart. She lost her usual calmness and fell into a rare daze. Fumiton? Vermitten. Vermitten. What are you thinking about? Gudelia, who did not suspect anything, called out to Fumiton a few times, but she could not wake him up. Gudelia, you don't have to worry. Perhaps Fumiton is just thinking about his next move. Lux took Gudelia's hand and comforted her for a while before giving Ray Minkai a look. Apart from Gudelia, who had no idea what was going on, everyone present knew of Fumiton's plan. After a while, Fumiton, who had fallen into silence, suddenly woke up. Fortunately, Fumiton's control over his own body was strong enough. The moment Fumiton snapped out of his stupor, all the shock and uneasiness he felt when Ray Minkai exposed his scheme had been buried deep in his mind. He never revealed it, and it was as if he had never seen it before. Yes, the only way we can leave here is to get to the port as soon as possible. Otherwise, in the worst-case scenario, we will be trapped in Dot 3, waiting for the results of the search of this colonial satellite by the fleet sent by Gallahorn. Then, we have to leave here immediately? Then, what about Atlas and Biscat? There are still 3 suns and moons. When Gudelia heard this, she hurriedly spoke. Unexpectedly, Ray Minkai stopped her. No, Gudelia. You don't have to worry about Atlas and Biscat, 3 suns and moons. Before we came here, someone had already gone to save them. It doesn't matter if they have already fallen into Lars Horn's hands. Ray Minkai stunned Gudelia. Could it be that Your Excellency had anticipated this from the very beginning? Even Gudelia herself found it hard to believe when she thought of this. However, if Ray Minkai did not expect this chaos in advance, he probably would not have been prepared in advance. When Atlas and Biscat fell into Lars Horn's trap, he would not have sent out his already tight manpower. No. This is not a prediction. Gudelia. Ray Minkai glanced at Gudelia, then looked out the window again. Behind the buildings not far away, there were several more smoke columns rising into the air. Furthermore, these pillars of smoke were even closer to Ray Minkai, Lux, Gudelia, and Fumiton's hotel. Gudelia, this is bound to happen. How? Gudelia could not believe Ray Minkai's words. When she came to Dot 3, she saw a prosperous commercial district. This is a bustling city, just like Mars, built with the blood and tears of countless laborers. Gudelia Lana Bernstein. If you, Gudelia Lana Bernstein, who is known by the world as the revolutionary girl who can bring hope to the exploited people, come here in person, and come to this city that looks prosperous on the outside, but is actually built with the blood and tears of countless laborers, what do you think the oppressed and exploited people will think? Pausing for a moment, Ray Minkai turned around and exchanged glances with Lakis. Especially before you and the Iron Flower Regiment arrived here, the story of you, Gudelia Lana Bernstein, has already spread among the oppressed and exploited people. Perhaps now, countless people are waiting for you to appear in front of the camera, just like the July conference, and lead the people here to roar angrily against the evil that oppresses and exploits them. Gudelia was silent. She had no idea that there was such a secret behind her arrival. If what Ray Minkai said was true, then the most fundamental reason for the turmoil in this colonial satellite group named Dot was probably her arrival. Just when Gudelia was feeling confused and anxious, Lux's voice made her look at Fumiton again. No, Gudelia. You don't have to blame yourself. This is just a conspiracy that happened at the right time. Right, Fumiton? No matter how intense the turmoil inside the colonial satellite was, this tumbler-shaped colonial satellite that allowed humans to survive in the universe still rotated slowly at its pace. It was not disturbed by the internal turmoil at all, and even by Lars Horn's battleships that gradually appeared from the vast space and surrounded it. How's Mr. K's preparation? Galio, who returned to Neku from the bridge, looked at the purple-blue body that once belonged to him but was now handed over to someone else. The black-haired man who received the purple-blue body stood there. It looks good. But is it really okay for you to hand over Schwalberg to me? Speaking of which, this is also your body. The black-haired young man glanced at the body that already belonged to him and chuckled. No. There's nothing wrong with this. Also, I've also taken out my family's treasures. Galio did not care about handing over Schwalberg to the black-haired young man. Instead, he had great expectations for the treasures that he found in his family's warehouse. Gauda Simone. This was the Gauda skeleton body that was ranked 66th among the 72 demon god bodies known as Gauda. It was known by the world at the Victory Parade after the end of the Sacrificial War, and then it was sealed by the Bardovan family, one of the 7-star families at that time. Until now, it was dug out from the deepest part of the warehouse by Galio, the current heir of the Bardovan family. This is really confusing, Mr. K. Don't you think it's strange that such an ancient mech would once again enter the battlefield for actual combat? Galio came to the black-haired young man, Lu Lucio, and looked up at Gau de Simone that stopped behind Schwalberg. Strange? Haha. Mr. Galio. No matter how old it is, a weapon is still a weapon. Before its structure is completely withered, its essence will always be to kill and take away the enemy's life. Lu Lucio, on the other hand, was not as sentimental. For him, whether it was Lu Lucio Lamperougi or Emperor Lu Lucio V. Britannia, their memories of weapons were the same. Weapons that could kill enemies would not be differentiated by age. The only thing that differentiated them was whether they could take away the enemy's life. Can it kill the enemy? Galio pondered for a moment and then laughed. Ha 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 ha. That's true. I was too obsessed. That's right. It doesn't matter if Gau de Simone is an antique passed down from the era of the Sacrificial War. The one standing in front of me now is not an antique lying in the depths of the warehouse, but the real Gau de Simone. That's right. Lu Lucio nodded slightly. Then, Galio changed the topic. Right. We can't attack yet. Those guys at the Control Bureau seem to be planning something. Luring the snake out of its hole? Although Galio didn't say it explicitly, Lu Lucio already knew the truth behind the whole incident. Otherwise, he wouldn't have secretly asked C.C. to go to Dort 3 to contact Ray Minkai. However, in front of Galio, Lu Lucio had to pretend that he had thought it through carefully before seeing the truth behind it. Yes, the atmosphere inside doesn't seem to have reached its limit. Galio didn't doubt him, and casually told him what he had heard in the bridge. As the successor of the 7-star Baldur family, as long as Galio spoke, no one in Lars Horn would dare to deny him. Therefore, in order to make Galio give up the idea of directly entering Dort 3, the captain of the cruiser racked his brains and used indirect methods to make Galio give up on the idea of rushing in and taking care of the Ironflower Regiment. Are you still using these old tricks? I didn't expect that as the center of power for Lars Horn, we still need to use such shameless methods and tricks. The people at the Control Bureau are really despicable. Lu Lucio sneered a few times, which made the crew not far away look over. However, when they saw Galio standing next to Lu Lucio, they immediately turned around and lowered their heads to focus on their work. Despicable? Indeed. Mr. K, I realize that there are some things that we still feel the same way about. The corners of Galio's mouth twitched, and he agreed with Lu Lucio's description of the Control Bureau. Is that so? Lu Lucio glanced at Galio. Is it because of this that you want to reform this organization that has long since withered? But don't be careless, Mr. Galio. Galio raised his eyebrows when he heard this. He raised his hand to smooth out his messy hair and replied confidently, "Yes, of course." While Galio and Lu Lucio were talking about the despicable methods used by the Control Bureau, Lars Horn's troops, who had entered Dort 3 to secretly investigate, had already spread out. In the building controlled by this troop, they captured the girl who was said to be Gudelia Lana Bernstein and members of the Ironflower Regiment. In order to get the information they wanted, the Lars Horn soldiers in charge of the interrogation didn't care about taboos. Instead, they directly put the girl on the table and used a show of strength to intimidate the revolutionary girl, Gudelia Lana Bernstein. However, not only did their intimidation not work, but it also strengthened the will of Gudelia Lana Bernstein. No matter what Lars Horn did to her, she still didn't speak. She didn't even admit that she was Gudelia Lana Bernstein. TSK. She's really stubborn. How about we send her back to the base? If it was over there, there would be tools and medicine. We can relax a bit. The soldiers in charge of the interrogation seemed to have lost their patience. If it weren't for the fact that they had to take certain things into consideration, the two Gallahorn soldiers in charge of the interrogation would have done more than just beat him up on the spot. Suddenly, before the two Lars Horn soldiers could make a decision, a muffled sound came from the corridor outside, as well as a suppressed scream. Ah! Puff! As well as the sound of heavy footsteps. It was as if there was a huge and heavy creature walking in the corridor outside. Confused, the two Lars Horn soldiers didn't rush to open the door to check. Instead, they leaned against the door, one on the left and one on the right, and pulled out their pistols, ready to ambush any enemy that might appear. However, just like the sudden scream and muffled sound just now, the heavy footsteps wandering in the corridor outside suddenly stopped. Then, just as the silence descended and the two Lars Horn soldiers relaxed slightly, a terrifying force suddenly erupted from the corridor outside, forcefully knocking down the door and the wall. The soldiers standing on the left and right sides of the door were sent flying by the terrifying impact. They flew out from the left and right sides of the girl with billowing smoke and dust, slamming into both sides of the window. In an instant, cracks visible to the naked eye spread to the entire wall with the two Lars Horn soldiers as the center. On the other hand, a ferocious lion slowly walked out of the smoke and dust on the other side of the door that had been knocked down and came in front of the girl. Chapter 704. Da-da-da. When the messy and dense footsteps came from the other side of the passage, a group of Lars Horn soldiers with live ammunition rushed out of the passage. However, before these Gallahorn soldiers could raise the assault rifles in their hands, they were shocked by the crisscrossing claw marks on the wall and the soldiers who had fallen into a pool of blood. There was not a single piece of their bodies that was intact. What exactly is going on? Second Lieutenant Lars Horn, who was leading the group, was stunned and couldn't understand everything in front of him. The crisscrossing claw marks on the wall were very different from the beasts known to humans. Second Lieutenant, there's still one alive here. It's our informant. The call from the other side of the room made the second lieutenant quickly step into the room, stepping on the pool of blood that gradually spread to the entire corridor. It was a man in a suit with a dull expression. From his expression, it seemed that he was greatly frightened and lost his soul. This was not strange at all. As long as it was an ordinary person who lived in peaceful times, as long as they saw the extremely shocking and terrifying scene in the corridor outside, they would definitely lose their soul like the man in front of them. Of course, if they brought this man back and took care of him, they would definitely be able to smoothly get the information they wanted. However, if they went back and forth like this, they would definitely lose the best opportunity to chase the enemy. Therefore, Second Lieutenant Lars Horn stepped on the bloody footprints and came in front of the man, reached out and grabbed his collar, then, slap, slap. After 2 consecutive slaps, under the severe pain caused by the slaps, the man's dull eyes seemed to have a trace of light. But it's not enough. Therefore, Second Lieutenant Lars Horn raised his hand again. Slap, slap. 2 more slaps. This time it was effective. However, the effect seemed to be a little beyond Second Lieutenant Lars Horn's expectations. By see Kate, the dull man moved his mouth and said a name. And this name was not unfamiliar to Second Lieutenant Lars Horn. This was because he had come for this name, as well as the new Iron Splendor Regiment that was hidden behind this name. But before Lars Horn could ask, a strong force broke away from the man's collar. No! No, no! Don't come any closer! No! His sluggish expression was quickly replaced by extreme fear. That pair of eyes that had just glowed with a trace of rationality was now filled with boundless fear. The man retreated in panic. Even if the soldiers of Gjallarhorn were standing in front of him, they were armed with live ammunition. What happened? Second Lieutenant Lars Horn subconsciously took a step forward, but he unexpectedly pushed the man into an even more terrifying abyss. Ah! The man screamed and retreated until he reached the window. In that boundless fear, the man's hands touched the edge of the window. At this moment, the cold wind that blew in from outside the window stopped the man's emotions that were about to fall into the abyss of collapse. Then, the man's pair of eyes that were occupied by panic seemed to have recovered a trace of rationality. It's you guys. The man seemed to have recognized the soldiers Lars Horn in front of him. A trace of a creepy smile quietly climbed up the man's mouth, making the soldiers standing behind Second Lieutenant Lars Horn subconsciously take a step back. It's you guys, the man said faintly. His voice was hollow, but it was filled with some kind of terrifying emotion. It's you guys. Lars Horn's lords. Hey, you better calm down. What exactly happened here? Second Lieutenant Lars Horn seemed to feel that the man had recovered to the level of rationality that he could talk to, and subconsciously put on the attitude that he used to treat informants, no, to treat people that were defined as sinners by Lars Horn in the past. What happened? The man chuckled. In the laughter, there was fear and madness that was about to collapse. What happened? Didn't Lars Horn's lords see it clearly? The lion tore everyone apart? In the deep laughter, there was a narration that was like a whisper from hell. Moreover, before the narration that was like a demon's whisper was finished, the man suddenly let out a terrifying scream. Ah! Everyone is dead. They were all torn apart by the lion. In the terrifying scream, the man was as agile as a monkey. Taking advantage of the moment when Lars Horn's soldiers were stunned, he suddenly turned around and climbed up the window. Then, in the whistling wind and the ear-piercing scream, he crashed to the ground and exploded a dazzling and bewitching flower of blood on the white and flat ground. The sudden change caught Lars Horn's soldiers off guard. But they also caught the most crucial evidence. Lion, the man's panic scream was not worthless. However, would there really be a lion-like beast in this colonial satellite? Moreover, it was a lion that could scare humans. D.D. Coincidentally, when this Second Lieutenant Lars Horn was about to order to clean up this terrible scene, an emergency call for support came. Third Squad requesting support. A suspected target was found, and there is an unknown beast beside the suspected target. Lion? Looking at this message, Second Lieutenant Lars Horn was shocked. He seemed to have caught the key point. Da-da-da-da-da. Gunshots swept the entire street. The whistling rain of bullets scared the ordinary people on the entire street into retreating into their shop. They didn't dare to raise their heads to observe the battle on the street. There were even some timid people who trembled as they followed behind the shop owner and crawled into the isolation chamber under the shop. Although that was just a comfort facility, they are really chasing us. Listening to the continuous gunshots from behind, Biscat, who was holding the steering wheel, gritted his teeth and tried his best to get rid of the pursuers behind him. Be careful! In front! The moment the vague words came from Biscat's side, a white shadow rushed out from the side of Biscat's car without any warning. Like a meteor, it rushed into Lars Horn's armored car that came from the right intersection. Roar! The moment the thunderous roar rang out, the armored vehicle that almost succeeded in intercepting Biscat and Atlas exploded with a loud bang. In the billowing flames, a white shadow stepped out of the flames and once again landed beside Biscat's car. State Zero, Your Excellency, you really made a big commotion. Looking at White Lion's fiery claws, Biscat opened his mouth and could only say this in the end. No matter what, with the flesh and blood that Biscat knew, the pure White Lion that smashed an armored car in one move was already beyond the level of human cognition in today's world. Who would have thought that there was a beast that could tear an armored car apart with its flesh and blood? Roar! A low growl came from State Zero's throat, and that pair of extremely human-like eyes cast a glance at Biscat. Somehow, Biscat knew what State Zero wanted him to do with one glance. Good. Sit tight, Atra. Now we will rush to the port immediately. Aren't we going back? Atlas, whose face was swollen red, squeaked a few times. In the end, under Biscat's rapid turn, he gave up the idea of continuing to ask. In fact, State Zero knew what Atlas wanted to ask. However, these things did not require Atlas's attention, because, when State Zero started to rescue Atlas and Biscat, Ray Minkai had already started to move. Woo-woo-woo, the low engine sound came from afar. In the midst of the engine sound that echoed on the streets, Lars Horn's soldiers who set up checkpoints near the spaceport saw a car with a low roar coming towards them quickly. There was no hesitation. There was no hesitation. The moment the well-trained Lars Horn's soldiers saw the uninvited guest, they immediately raised the assault rifle in their hands and turned on the high brightness. The extremely dazzling searchlight was aimed at the uninvited guest. Unknown car. Please stop immediately. Please stop immediately. Otherwise, we will treat you as a thug with the intention of attacking, and will take effective defensive measures to prevent violent situations from happening. Under the dazzling searchlight, there was a loudspeaker that was constantly broadcasting warnings. However, even if the loudspeaker was loud enough to set off waves of deafening sound waves on the streets, it could not suppress the sound waves set off by the car that was speeding towards the checkpoint. Close. Close. The moment the roaring engine sounded like an explosion in the ears of the soldiers of Gjallarhorn, the soldiers of Gjallarhorn, who were on high alert with their guns raised, had already seen the face that was driving the car towards them from the windshield of the car. It's a man. The moment this thought appeared, the frontline commander of Lars Horn, who was in charge of this checkpoint, suddenly ordered, "Fire! Attack!" Tut 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 tut. In an instant, the sound of gunfire was heard. Whistling bullets, flames of different length, and the faintly discernible trajectory became the main theme of this moment. However, the Lars Horn checkpoint that set off a hail of bullets in an instant did not achieve the expected effect. In the imagination of these Lars Horn soldiers, the car that came out of nowhere did not succeed in breaking through the checkpoint. Instead, it would be hit by their bullet screen, then flip high and finally explode under the bullet screen. It would end up as a tragic clown who tried to challenge Lars Horn's hundreds of years of fame. But what was the reality? Not only did the car that came out of nowhere not explode under the bullet screen, but a white shadow appeared in front of the car to block it. As the faint wall of light appeared, all the attacks set off by this checkpoint and all the bullet screen disappeared. All that was left were the bullets that seemed to have been frozen in time, quietly hovering in the air. What's going on? The same question once again appeared in the hearts of the soldiers who belonged to Lars Horn. However, this time, these soldiers who belonged to Lars Horn did not have the luck to get the answer. Buzz! With a slight roar, a sharp, dazzling, and extremely terrifying shock wave suddenly swept through the entire street. Not only did it set off a terrifying hurricane that was strong enough to tear apart the shops on both sides of the street, it even tore the checkpoint in the middle of the street into pieces as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Along with the scarlet red that swept over from all directions, it quickly gathered together and dyed the street a shocking and extremely horrifying bright red. Roar! After the hurricane, a proud roar sounded. The car did not slow down at all. Stepping on the retreating tail of the hurricane, it rushed through the broken checkpoint and sped towards the port in the distance. White Lion, who had made such a terrifying attack, did not care about this. Instead, it turned its head to look at the street next to it and looked at the car that had just turned into this street. Not good. Atra, don't look around. As soon as Biscat saw the terrifying red on the walls on both sides of the street, he immediately understood something. Under his hurried reminder, although Atlas did not see the situation on both sides of the street, he had already thought of a clue. After all, when White Lion rescued the two of them, the terrifying scene in the aisle was not a lie. In order to walk through the aisle, Atlas could be said to have exhausted all his strength since he was born. Right now, being able to persist without fainting was already the limit of what Atlas could do. After a long time, Biscat's voice was heard. Atlas, we're here. Your Excellency, Miss Lakis, and Gudelia are waiting for us over there. Outside. 3. Galio and Lu Lucio received an unbelievable piece of news. Lion? How did an animal from Earth appear in. 3. Galio looked at the information in his hand and was very surprised. As the investigation continued, even more surprising things appeared in front of Galio's eyes. How is this possible? The well-trained Lars Horn soldiers were killed by a beast that somehow came from Earth to. 3. How is this possible? Galio was so angry that he laughed and sneered. Lion, what kind of beast is it? Galio knew. But no matter how ferocious the beast was, it could not defeat the well-trained and fully armed Lars Horn soldiers. Not to mention other things, just the tacit cooperation of the formation shooting was enough to kill all the beasts on Earth. But even so, the Lars Horn soldiers were all defeated. There was an enemy that ran into space. I'm not waiting anymore. The more Galio looked, the more he felt like he was going to explode. He threw the tablet in his hand aside and turned to Gao de Simonli. Now I must attack immediately. Whether it's a lion or a cat, I will take care of it. This is Lars Horn's humiliation. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.